Because I think a lot of times we struggle with doing what we're supposed to do because we don't understand who we are. Because sometimes we think, oh, that's for them. That's for somebody else. Well, actually, what if it's not for somebody else? What if it's actually for you? And so we have to understand that when it says that this is for Israel, or this is for the children of the living Elohim, or this is for the children of promise, or this is, who are those people? And how does that relate to you? Could you be those people? So let's begin in John chapter 1 and verse 11. John chapter 1 verse 11 says, he came to his own. This is talking about the one who becomes Yeshua down in verse 14. The word that has life, because it hasn't been referred to yet as Yeshua, but the word that was in the beginning came to his own, and his own did not receive him. But as many as received him, to them he gave the authority to become children of Elohim, to those believing in his authority, in his name. So notice what he says there. He came to his own. At this point, the own that he came to is all created people. Because we haven't had any separation out here of Abraham or Isaac or Jacob or Moses or any of that stuff. This is, he hasn't put on flesh. We haven't had any of that stuff going on. But through time, going all the way to this verse, you have everybody that was created all the way until Yeshua was finally born in the flesh. So when he says he came to his own, it's not just starting at Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. It says he came to his own. It's from the very beginning. Because even when he came to his own, he had Cain and Abel, didn't you? You have that story, and he said he came to them, and one chose badly, one chose well, and how they dealt with the offerings. So it says he came to his own, and his own did not receive him. Not all of them received him. It doesn't say that his own didn't receive him as a whole. This is one of those things that people get tripped up with when you read a verse that could be interpreted individually by itself in one fashion if you don't read further. If you just read the verse, it says he came to his own, and his own didn't receive him. Well, there you go. He came to his own, it's all over. So now he's looking for somebody else. This is kind of where those replacement theology things come in. The church is now Israel, blah, 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 blah. Okay? But that's not the end of the story. He says he came to his own, and his own in general did not receive him. He says, however, but those who did, which was clearly not the majority, he says, but as many who did, because he already said the majority didn't, as many who did, to them he gave authority to become children of Elohim. And by authority, he says he gave them the potential, the ability, the understanding they needed so that they could be called the children of the living Elohim. And so that's an important distinction we have there. And he said, look, who are these people? They're those believing in his name, believing in his authority. Remember, we did that whole teaching called No Other Name. Those believing in his authority, his reputation, his identity. So if you believe, if I tell you not to touch something and you go and do it anyway, did you believe me? So those who believe are those that listen, follow, trust, and obey. They believe in that authority. But notice that he also says in verse 13, he goes, these are not necessarily those who are born of blood. In other words, it had nothing to do with genealogy and bloodline, nor of the desire of the flesh. It's not just because they wanted it, nor of the desire of man. In other words, just putting in some sort of effort. I want it. I'm going to work for it. No. He says, but of Elohim. So those are the ones who just believed in his name. There's a process. You yield and submit and obey and believe. It's not something that you could just say, well, I'm just going to, earn it by being the one who put in the most effort. Well, you can put in a lot of effort and not believe. You could say, but I was born in this particular tribe or family or whatever. I have this bloodline. He says, well, who cares? That's not it either. It's not about any of that. What is it about? Decisions. We have a teaching called Making Decisions, the reason you exist. That's why you exist, to make decisions, to show the Father what kind of decisions you make. So it's based on a decision here that those who made the decision and received him. Now, by the way, did you notice something also in there? He offered to all of them. He came to his own. He offered them all. It's like salvation. We talk about that often. Salvation, it was made available to all, freely given, freely offered. But not everybody will choose what the next step is to do because of the salvation being offered. And that's what's happening here. He came to his own, and only some of them chose to take the next step. And that's the key that we have to all embrace. So being called children of the living Elohim has to do with a choice. All right, if you'll all rise for the sounding of the shofar. Amen. All right, well, I'm going to pass out. Amen. Let's go ahead and sing and dance and praise his holy name.
Shabbat Shalom, hey, Shabbat Shalom, hey, Shabbat, 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 Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom, hey, Shabbat Shalom, hey, Shabbat, 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 Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat, 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 Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat, 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 Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom, hey, Shabbat Shalom, hey, Shabbat, 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 Shabbat Shalom. Shalom Yerushalayim, Shalom Shalom Yerushalayim, Shalom Shalom, Shalom Shalom, Shalom Shalom, Shalom Shalom Yerushalayim. Pray for the peace of Jerusalem, pray for the peace of Jerusalem. Pray for the peace of Jerusalem. Jerusalem shall live in open up. With understanding, you order the seasons, creating day and night, turning darkness into light, arranging the stars to your pleasing. Baruch et Yahweh, HaMevorach, Le'olam vayed. Baruch et Yahweh, HaMevorach, Le'olam vayed. Oh, blessed be the King, to the Holy One we sing.
Come, let us praise the Lord and sing him a new song. Come, let us sing his praise together with the saints, with all the righteous ones. Let Israel rejoice in her Creator. Let the children of Eretz Zion be glad in their King. Let them praise his name with dancing, making music with the tambourine and harp. For the Lord takes pleasure in his people. He will crown the humble with salvation. Let the saints rejoice in this order. Sing and dance unto the Lord. Come, let us praise the Lord and sing him a new song. Come, let us sing his praise together with the saints, with all the righteous ones. Let Israel rejoice in her Creator. Let the children of Eretz Zion be glad in their King. Let them praise his name with dancing, making music with the tambourine and harp. For the Lord takes pleasure in his people. He will crown the humble with salvation. Let the saints rejoice in this order. Sing and dance unto the Lord. Let them praise his name with dancing, making music with the tambourine and harp. For the Lord takes pleasure in his people. He will crown the humble with salvation. Let the saints rejoice in this order. Sing and dance unto the Lord. Sing and dance unto the Lord. Sing and dance unto the Lord.
Arise and shine. Arise and shine. Arise and shine, for thy light is come. The glory of the Lord is seen upon thee. And the nations shall come unto thy light, and kings to the brightness of thy rising. Lift up thine eyes round about and see, they gather themselves all together. So arise and shine, for thy light is come. Arise and shine, for thy light is come. Arise and shine, for thy light is come. The glory of the Lord is seen upon thee. The glory of the Lord is seen upon thee. And the sons of those who afflicted thee, and all who have despised you will bow down. Then they shall call you the city of the Lord, Zion of the Holy One of Israel. So arise and shine, for thy light is come. Arise and shine, for thy light is come. Arise and shine, for thy light is come. The glory of the Lord is seen upon thee. The glory of the Lord is seen upon thee. So arise and shine, for thy light is come. Arise and shine, for thy light is come. Arise and shine, for thy light is come. The glory of the Lord is seen upon thee. Oh, arise and shine, for thy light is come. Arise and shine, for The glory of the Lord is seen upon thee. The glory of the Lord is seen upon thee.
I praise from shore to shore in all your creation. Let it ring from mountain tops, let my voice proclaim the tender mercies of my Lord. Yeshua is his name. Messiah of Israel is he, restorer of our nation. Hope of David now we see, bringing us salvation. Root of Jesse, Lion of Judah, Judge of Israel. Now we praise you for your joy and love that never fails. Jesse, Lion of Judah, Judge of Israel. How I praise you, Lord, you're the rock of my salvation. You I praise from shore to shore in all your creation. Let it ring from mountain tops, let my voice proclaim tender mercies of my Lord. Yeshua is his name. Yeshua is his name.
To receive your love, you're gonna put us through it all to see if we fall. To receive your guiding hand, you're gonna take us through the wilderness to see where we land. You're taking us through the fire. Separate us from me, learn from me. I am meek and humble. In your heart, my yoke is gentle and my burden is light. Come to me, all you labor. Come to me, I shall give you rest. Come to me, all who are burdened. Come to me, and I shall give you rest. Take my yoke upon you. Learn from me. I am meek and humble. In your heart, my yoke is gentle and my burden is light. Come to me, all you labor. Come to me, I shall give you rest. Come to me, all who are burdened. Come to me, and I shall give you rest. Yahweh is our strength and our shield, and under His wings we take refuge. He is our God in whom we trust. Yahweh is our strength and our shield, and under His wings we take refuge. He is our God in whom we trust. Come to me, all you labor. Stay in me, I shall give you rest. Come to me, all who are burdened. Stay in me, and I shall give you rest. And I shall give you rest. You say, blessed are the meek, they shall inherit the earth. But I don't have the right hunger, no, I don't have the right thirst. But I've been longing for your glory, your righteousness. So let your light all shine before all
Amen. Amen. Father, we are just so blessed to have the talents and the gifts here and the praise team that you've provided us, and the inspiration to write these songs that are praising your name, and it's just helping all of us to have our heads in the right place and our minds and our focus in the right place as we start this service. And so, Father, we pause now as we come before you to thank you, to praise you, and appreciate that you cared enough about us, that you loved us enough that from the beginning, before there even was anything really happening, that right after you created us, you gave us this time of rest. You created the Sabbath day. Knowing that, Father, after you brought us into existence, that we would need this time of rest, a time to be restored and refreshed, a time to sit at your feet, a time to put aside all the cares and concerns of this world and to completely focus on the things of your world. And so, Father, we thank you for this day. Father, help us to truly just immerse ourselves in the day and put aside all those things so that we can sit at your feet now to be guided and led in all things. And we ask you to guide and lead all things here so that we would learn and to be able to take from what we learn and add it into our walk and become that much more transformed and conformed into the image of Yeshua. So, Father, we thank you now, praising your holy name in the name above all names, Yeshua our Messiah. Amen. 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 You may be seated. Okay, another fantastic job by the praise team. So pretty soon here we'll be able to do entire sets of just the stuff they wrote. We have enough songs now to do it. We're just spreading them out a little bit. So that's really exciting. Great job. And as you can see, we're always continuously, seems like we're adding equipment and things. So just, pay no attention to the equipment. It's not actually working yet, but we're getting it there. So we're adding things to enhance how things are done. In case you're wondering what the TV screen is doing up here, that's so that I can see the slides. So during announcements and also during things like Rosh Kodesh, instead of me having to come out there and look at the screen you guys are looking at, I could see it from here. Okay? And so we'll have the slides up on the screen for me to see, so that'll be really good. Parents, please keep your children away from the screen. Okay, we don't need a lot of little handprints and things on the screen. Okay. It is on wheels. We can move it, and we probably will from time to time to keep it out of the way, like before Oneg and stuff, but just want to let you know. Okay, so that all being said, this is the time when we take up the prayer and praise of the body. We are, feeling vertically minded. We're focused, hopefully, vertically. And so this is a good time for us to come before him with what we need in terms of any kind of issues in our lives, but also to praise him for all of the things, small and great, that he does every day in our lives. We got Steve has got the mic, so he'll be walking around with it. Rebitson's got her hand up. Okay, coming around. So if you're on live stream, Rob Wyatt, and I'm sure Kurt Meyer's on there as well, helping to monitor. Please be respectful of these guys and their authority in the chat room. Okay, this is a Beth Shalom and MTOI service to which we're doing it in a public way so that all of you are welcome as guests. And I should be looking this way, I guess, at the camera. And but please be respectful that we would encourage you and actually expect you to behave as you would likely behave if you were physically here in person. Because sometimes I think people feel emboldened when they're on a chat in a live stream thing than thinking that they're actually at a live service. And there's a certain level of decorum and respect that is appropriate for being in that. So the authorities in the room are Rob and Kurt, and please respect their authority if they ask you to stop doing something or however that may play out. Okay, that being said, we'll begin with Rebitson Julie. Looking beautiful in yellow today. Okay, HH1 is not on, or 2, I guess. HH2 is not on. Bring it to me. Maybe it's not actually powered on. Okay, there you go. Okay.
Okay, Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Thank you. And thank you for the compliment.
You're welcome.
I got the fall memo. So I just wanted to ask prayers for Stephen, who's home. He's just a little bit under the weather, and I know he's watching. Hi, Stephen. Mom loves you.
Okay. Because after all, as a teenager, that didn't embarrass him at all. Mama loves you. Okay. Okay, and I only made it worse, obviously, so. And embarrassed. Can somebody else have the mic other than Deirdre so we don't see how red my wife is sitting right next to her? Because your dress and her face are starting to be the same color. Okay.
Sorry.
No, it's not your fault, it's my fault. Okay, go ahead.
Shalom, family.
Shalom.
So when my husband was in the military, this is a praise, by the way. When my husband was in the military, he was diagnosed with two different chemical imbalances. One of them is dysthymia, also known as persistent depression disorder, which is take depression and multiply it times 3.
Okay.
The other one is called schizoid personality disorder. It's not the same thing as schizophrenia, but as a human, you are very standoffish. You don't tend to pursue even close relationships. And he's been struggling with that for a very, very long time. And because of circumstances that just take way too long to explain, and we don't have the time, I am just very happy to announce that after years of being in denial, he is finally seeking help for that.
Hey, all right.
He's going to see a psychotherapist, and he's going to meet someone for medication. He's also going to meet someone for a sleep study. So it's a step in the right direction, and also a praise that even though I don't necessarily think he's listening, sometimes he's listening to what we listen to here. I was listening to a sermon last night, and we even through to the Afterburn, and he goes, "Well, that was interesting." I'm like, "Are you my husband?" Yay.
There you go.
So yay, thank you guys for prayers.
Amen. Excellent praise report.
All right, I have one.
And by the way, that goes along with everything I've said about own it. He's finally decided to own it, so now he can fix it. And so that's very exciting. You can't fix something until you own it, and so that's great. Steve.
Okay, I have one. Finally, I am a resident of Tennessee.
Hey!
So I no longer have to wonder how much wood could a woodchuck chuck, if a wood could chuck wood, because the woodchuck's here.
That's right. We're going to have to film the Woodchuck and Waffle Man video or something. So, okay. We'll make it like a superhero battle, the Waffle Man versus the Woodchuck. All right, so who's next? That's for all you Marco Polo guys who are familiar with some of the funny stuff between Steve and Chuck, and they have a good time, those two. All right, so no other hands seem to be going up. Oh, wait, Manny's got his hand up.
Just wanted to raise up, first off, this ministry and you for taking as much beating as you do normally. And for the staff here, too, they're pretty remarkable. The work is tons and the workers are few. But with that said, I'm happy that Michael Diaz is home. So he finally is here. And I just wanted to lift up Tracy, has Wayfair. AJ, she wanted to send out a prayer to him too.
Amen. Hey, Marty, can I get HH2 in this monitor? I don't hear anything. All right, who else? Okay, Michael Diaz, welcome to Tennessee.
Thank you. So my praise report, obviously, is I'm finally here. And also a prayer request for Bubblegum. He's the next one that's on his way, and they need prayer, encouragement, and all of that. And so asking for prayer for him and his family.
Right, that's right, because Charles Davis is coming, so we're all excited about that. We affectionately call him Bubba Gump. You'll meet him, you'll know. And he embraces it, so don't feel like we're insulting him at all. Okay? Who's next? All right, bring it to Rob.
Okay, from Norfleet G, please pray for my mom. She fell twice yesterday and refuses to go to the hospital, as I am taking care of her. From Heidi Bennett, prayers for Dale and the girls. We seem to have caught a bug From Mara Smith, please pray for me and my health and my son for his health also. Prayer for my son to be able to have more time with his wife each month. Janice Schreiber, please, as my sons and I are still dealing with raw emotions concerning the sudden death of their father. Rick Berry, prayer for my wife Betty and for our daughter Kayla, who's battling a cold of some kind, and for my travel back to Cleveland, Tennessee this Monday. From Tamara Wyatt, prayers for wisdom. I was meeting with the dean of nursing Tuesday to explain and defend the holy days, and prayers for healing and pain in her back. Daisy Freiberger, please pray for me. I have a terrible sinus infection that is making me very dizzy and nauseous. Brandon Carrick, prayer for my family's travel for Sukkot, my mom's healing from surgery, and praise for Yah that he has blessed us so much. Evangeline Agalasso, praise Yahweh for healing me from my vertigo last Sunday and was able to drive and go to work Tuesday. Aaron Murray, prayer, still dealing with severe pain every day with insufficient pain medication, asking for endurance and relief. From Michelle, my name is Michelle, and I praise Yah for finding this congregation. I need prayer for family salvation and a physical healing for me. Diane Bloom, praise report. I was able to have a virtual interview for a job within my organization. Prayers to endure the stresses and pressures from multiple directions, causing a lot of physical and mental toll. From Nolan and Jennifer Bibb, please pray for my family. Sickness is running through our house, and it's hitting Jennifer and Alexis hard today. Praise Yah, I have not gotten sick yet, and pray that I don't. From Arthur and Linda, prayers for Linda and myself. We're both suffering from severe intestinal infections. Prayers for a speedy recovery. From Arlene Champagne, prayers for 2-year-old Harvey, protection from physical and emotional abuse and neglect. Please include all children around the world as unsafe conditions. From Olivia and Janet Hoffman, prayers for my mom, who is 80, who's dealing with persistent cough. From Michelle Perez, prayers for sick elderly neighbors to get well. MTOI Lakeview, prayers for the Andersons as they make the move to their new home tomorrow. MTOI Lakeview again. Brian, prayers for Adena Hospital and the turmoil after having a patient who was of the Aryan nation. Deborah Fagan, praise report. Jerry and I were in a bad car accident a few days ago. Other person hit us and totaled their car, but ours was okay. All of us are okay. And that's it. Many unspoken and travel mercies and for upcoming feasts.
Amen. Amen. Okay, let me just go ahead and add a few things here. So we had a really good and very successful meeting with Ridgecrest on Thursday, and so that's a big praise. We got to talk to their kitchen or their food service director and their head chef, and here's a praise for you. We were hoping this is a very big place. They could seat like 2,000 people for a meal at a time. I mean, that's how big this place is. There's going to be 6-7 groups there when we're there. We were requesting from them that we would have our own separate lines to go through so there would be no confusion. They took it a step further and just decided not to cook anything with pork or shellfish the whole week we're there. For anybody. So none of their meals for the whole week, 60 meals that they're making or whatever it is, they're not making any with any of that. No, they said except for there is a maybe Sunday breakfast or something where they're going to be putting bacon out, but they said that should be easy enough for you guys to figure out. And I think they'll give us a separate line for that. But Other than that, they said rather than just try to figure us out, they're going to just make it for everybody. That means things like yogurt and cheese and whatever else that we need them to do. They're just going to buy enough that they feed everybody the same stuff. How's that? Okay? So that's a praise. So we were very excited because, it's a new facility for us, and they don't know us that well, and we don't know them that well. But, they're also asking for the feast dates going out to 2024. They want our business. They want our... And so keep this in prayer. Somehow they got the dates for 2020 a little confused, so they're having a little challenge juggling some things for Sukkot, but they have us all set for Passover. So we're working on some of those things. They don't think it'll be a problem. They just got to juggle a group or two that may be more flexible to adjust their dates or something. So we're working on that. But they'd like our dates going out 4 years. So they're really trying to work this out. They love the idea of us coming and spending, which is funny because they're the place that when we first called them 2 years ago, when they found out that we were Messianic, they said, never mind. And then they contacted us last January and they said, well, no, actually, we'd like to have you here. I said, well, our statement of beliefs and yours don't match. And I said, that's fine. They believe in Messiah, we believe in Messiah. We don't see it exactly the same, but that's good enough for them, Okay? So it's worked out very nicely. Okay, so praise Yah for that. But keep in prayer that they juggle some things so we have our dates for next year all nice and set. I think it's going to work well. There'll still be some challenges. It's a very big campus, and there are lots of hills, and we'll have to figure out some transportation things to help shuttle people around, and we're working on that. We do have an opportunity to purchase a little 11-passenger or 15-passenger, I think it was originally, a little yellow school bus. It's only got like 3,500 miles on it. So it's fairly new. It's got a chair lift, and so we can. So it's kind of nice. So it's all set for that, and the price is fantastic. So we're going to see if we can pick that up. It's about an hour and a half from here, in one of the towns a little further north from here, about an hour or so, I guess, from here, and we'll pick that up. That could help us shuttle people around. So we're hoping that will work. Also, as far as more for the prayer. We did have a bunch of people contact us about a lot of things as we always get, so please keep those things in prayer. Things in South Africa are getting really challenged. Also, please keep in prayer that we're having, success can be its own challenge, let's put it that way. The school is doing great, but it's growing faster than that's great. But we went from not sure anybody was going to sign up to now we have almost more people, actually more kids than we can handle. So keep that in prayer that we have our staffing needs sort of, filled and people that are revealed that can, A, do the job and B, afford to get paid what we can pay them, which is the combination of the things that we need at this point. But we do have, how many children we got in there now? 22? And 22, 23, headed quickly towards 25. We got more people coming with children, so it's growing very quickly. I remember when we were only around 10 or 12, and now all of a sudden it's in the 20s. So keep that in prayer. Also, we met with the engineers and architects that are designing the new building, and they came in to do some sort of an assessment to get an idea of what's already here and what kind of access they would have, different things, so that we can connect up utilities and other stuff, whatever, for the new building. And let's keep that in prayer because we're going to need to, as you can see, the room is almost full. We're going to need to build that building here fairly soon. So that's going to be exciting as we work that out. Okay. Now, I did want to bring one more thing up during prayer time. And I think it has to do a little bit with what Manny said. He talks about the ministry being attacked. Look, I don't want to sound like, and I went to a ministry that every week for years whined about people attacking them and this other stuff and everything else. When we back when I was in Worldwide Church of God and there were splits going on, and what we want to make sure we're doing is I'm not here to tell you anything about, and we talked about this on Tuesday, about us being attacked. It's not an issue. I don't care. That's not a problem. I want you to be praying for the people that are having their issues and their struggles. All right? Now look, I've got a choice, and you could actually ask yourself, would you rather people do what they're doing and you never hear about it? Or would you rather know? Because guess what? A lot of you are interacting with people that are doing all kinds of stuff, and then when you find out later and you didn't know, you get embarrassed and says, I wish I knew. So you really don't leave us a lot of choice but to share that there are things going on. Okay? So as we announced on Tuesday, Candace Middleton has left. And we're not happy about that. We were very excited to help her be here. Okay, and she left in a very angry, ugly way and attacked not just me, but other people in text messages and other things. Now, for those of you that are all worried about her, she's already found a new home and is getting help or whatever she's getting. See, that didn't take very long. Okay? So that's not a problem from that point of view, but we don't wish anything ill on her because people have already started posting in some of our videos, shame on you for saying and bringing it out in public. Look, she's doing these things in public. She's out there doing Lashon Hara. She's spreading this stuff to people in the group, and the group needs to hear from me how it's being addressed. So you are welcome to contact myself. I would say you could also contact Evie, who's part of the staff, to understand the things that both of us have experienced in working with Candace, and understand that we have done everything that we could, at least to the best of our ability, to be there for her, to encourage her, to help her. Okay, and then this is just an episode that happened. We don't understand the extent of it, why it would be this extreme, but it's a very ugly response. Now, bear in mind, if I didn't tell you these things, it would be like not warning all those that were attaching themselves to Korach or Dathan and Aviram, and then the ground swallowed up. Like, wait a minute, we didn't know. They were all warned, step away. Okay, this woman right now is toxic. I don't want her to be. I'm not attacking her. All of you out there go, shame on you. No, we love Candace. We wish that she would get to the place where she can process these things to have less of the bitterness and the anger and stuff that's going on right now. But this is the way it is right now. So if you're interacting, and then also you are susceptible to negative influences, because a lot of you are listening to her and thinking and believing what she's saying. Never believe anybody that's in a strong emotional state. That includes when they're happy. Okay, if somebody's over the top happy, don't believe them either. You got to take everything with a little bit of a grain of salt, so to speak, okay? Because it's all being filtered and magnified by their emotion. Everything's bigger, larger, whether it's good or bad. Okay? So recognize that. And so please do not just listen to anybody who tells you anything, especially when they're in a strong negative emotion. Take it as a possible thing that might be true, and then go investigate for yourself and get more information. Okay? Because shame on you if you just listen to one side of one thing. Because none of you have ever done that, blasted somebody only to be embarrassed later to realize you kind of were wrong and over-exaggerated and now you were embarrassed. That's never happened, right? And then you put it on Facebook or you told all your friends and now you're like, and then your friends will be like, I thought you said that you were all mad at that person. Now I see you're all friends again. Oh, yeah, well, okay? Let's not do all that, okay? The official position is that we, the ministry, the leadership, love Candace and want her to be happy and successful in this walk. We did not ask her to leave. She left. So I just want to make sure we're clear. However, that all being said, you're not going to be helping her if you're helping her. I don't know how to explain that in a way that makes sense, because a lot of you think it's mean. It's not mean. If she comes to the leadership here, we will help her. I've already told you she's already found help. That's not the point. But some people would like to do is they like to leave and then have their cake and eat it. They want to benefit from all of the structure of MTOI, but not be a part of MTOI. And then you become, anybody know about codependency? Enabling? Let's not do that. Okay? If she contacts you, encourage her, go work out your stuff with the leadership. Love to help you, go work out your stuff with the leadership. Okay? And you can think that's wrong. I think it's scripturally 1,000,000% right. Okay? Now, this is something that will be going around and has been going around. She has told everyone that I will get angry with you and tell you to not friend her, not this. I've never done that. I never will do that. I said you don't want to be codependent. I didn't tell you to stop liking her, friending her, and other things, but just be careful of becoming codependent or allowing yourself to be susceptible to the negative while she's still in this place. That goes for anybody that ever does this in the future and everybody in the past. Okay? We're not here to shun anybody. It's not shunning. It's creating a space where that person... Look, do you know that in Israel they put you outside the camp? How horribly wrong. Get mad at Yahweh for that. How dare him put someone outside the camp? And you were not to go visit that person and coddle them outside the camp either. That is scriptural. We're just trying to imitate Scripture and do it in as loving a way as we can. Okay? Okay, I'm sorry to have to go through that again. But, we are getting aggressively attacked, and people are contacting us talking about the level of attack that's out there. So we're not assuming anything. We've had multiple people tell us about the stuff that it's Lashon Hara, evil speech. That is a big thing in Scripture. And you do not want to participate in this. Okay? All right. Anyway, I think that's going to cover it for the prayers. We are going to cover the prayers in prayer at the end. I want to do Mourner's Kaddish. We have a couple of more people suffering losses and have asked for the Mourner's Kaddish. So David's going to come up, lead us in the Mourner's Kaddish. Then I will come back up and pray for all the people in that and all these prayer requests and everything all at once. And then he will lead us in the liturgy. Okay, so if you're mourning the loss of a loved one, or if you want to stand with those who are mourning losses, you can go ahead and stand. The rest of you may stay seated, and David will lead us in Kaddish.
I just love this screen. Anyway. Yitgadal v'yitgadash Shemei Rabbah.
Amen.
בעלמא דברה חירותי, וימליך מלכותי, ויצמח פורקנה, וקרב משיחי, בחייכון וביומכון, ובחיי דכל בית ישראל. בגלה, בגלה, ובזמן קריב, ואמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מבורך, לעולם עולול מעלמיה, יתברך. יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמר קודשה בריחו לילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה תושבחתה ונחמתה דמירן בעלמה ואמרו אמן. יהי שלמה רבה מן שמיה וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו Glorified and sanctified be God's great name throughout the world which He has created, according to His will.
Amen.
Amen. May He establish His kingdom in your lifetime and during your days, and within the life of the entire house of Yisrael, speedily and soon, and say,
Amen.
Amen. May His great name be blessed forever and to all eternity. Blessed and praised, glorified and exalted, extolled and honored, adored and lauded be the name of the Holy One. Blessed be He, beyond all the blessings and hymns, praises and consolations that are ever spoken in the world. And say, Amen. May there be abundant peace from heaven and life for us and for all Yisrael. And say, Amen. He who makes peace in His high heavens, may He make peace for us and for all Yisrael, and say, Amen.
Amen. Amen. Father, we come before You, and we do ask now that You would extend a special comfort to those that are standing, those that are mourning the loss of a loved one, that You would Give them in your mercy and your compassion that shalom, that peace that goes beyond understanding. Wipe away every tear. Hold them close as they go through this grieving and mourning process. Father, pour forth your love on them so that they know that you're always there, especially in these challenging moments. Father, also we lift up all the praises to you from before and all of the prayer requests. We ask your attention on these things. We know that you know them before we even express them. We come to you as those, we're being those that know that you hear and answer prayer. And so, Father, we trust that you hear them, but we also trust that when you answer them, and you do answer all prayers, we know you do that. We also know that sometimes your answer is no, or not now, or not in the way that we had thought of it. And Father, we need to trust that your way is always, and your answer is always the right answer. So, Father, we thank you. We praise you, giving you all glory and honor. In the name above all names, Yeshua our Messiah. Amen. Amen. Okay, if you'll all rise for the liturgy.
Baruch Hu. Baruch Hu et Yahweh HaMevorach. Baruch Yahweh HaMevorach le'olam va'ed. Bless Yahweh, who is blessed. Blessed be Yahweh, who is blessed forever and ever. Amen. Ma tovu. And you shall love Yahweh your Elohim with all your heart, and with all your being, and with all your might. And these words which I am commanding you today shall be in your heart, and you shall impress them upon your children, and shall speak of them when you sit in your house, and when you walk by the way, and when you lie down, and when you rise up, and shall bind them as a sign on your hand, and they shall be as frontlets between your eyes, and you shall write them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates. Ve'ahavta l'recha kamocha, and you shall love your neighbor as yourself. Amen. Mi chamocha. Mi chamocha be'elim Yahweh. Mi kamocha mighty in holiness. You are awesome in praise, doing wonders, Yahweh, doing wonders, Yahweh. Beshamru, Beshamru, B'nai Yisrael, HaShabbat, La'asot et HaShabbat, Le'notam Berit Olam. Beshamru, B'nai Yisrael, HaShabbat, La'asot et HaShabbat, Le'notam Berit Olam. B'nai Yuven, B'nai Yisrael, B'nai Yisrael, Oti Le'olam. Beshamru, B'nai Yisrael, HaShabbat, La'asot et HaShabbat, Le'notam Berit Olam. Ki sheshet yamim asa Yahweh, asa Yahweh, et hashamayim ve'ha'aretz. Beshamru, B'nai Yisrael, HaShabbat, La'asot et HaShabbat, Le'notam Berit Olam. Ubayom hashvi'i, Shabbat vayinapash, Shabbat vayinapash, Shabbat vayinapash. Beshamru, B'nai Yisrael, HaShabbat, La'asot et HaShabbat, Le'notam Berit Olam. Together, and the children of Israel shall keep the Shabbat, to make the Shabbat throughout their generations an eternal covenant. Between me and the children of Israel, it is a sign forever that in 6 days Yahweh made the heavens and the earth, and on the seventh day he rested and was refreshed. Amen.
Amen. Okay, we're going to go ahead and get the chuppah set up, and then we'll bring the children out. That is going to Michael Long. All right, so we're just going to give them a minute here to get the chuppah set up. Okay, rotate around. There we go. Just like we practiced it. All right. Children, come on under. Okay, once we get the children under here, we'll go ahead and have Michael Long's going to lead us in the blessing over the children. And if you can extend your hearts and hands towards them, that would be great. Looks like we got everybody in place. Michael?
Father, we come before you to thank you for this Shabbat. We thank you for all these children that are under this chuppah that seems to be getting smaller and smaller by the day. We ask that you please be with all of these children. Help them to grow, to be in you and to stay in you, to be the branches that stay in you throughout their life. Help us as parents to keep them and tend to them and watch over them as their stewards that you have given us those responsibilities. Help us to see and look down on them and remember the patience that you have with us as adults and as your children. All this we ask you through the name and the authority of your Son, Yeshua HaMashiach. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Children, you are dismissed to your classes. You're back in the old Gadol room, so we're not out in the hallway here. right? I think we're, okay, they're back over here now? Okay. All right, you may be seated. Sorry, there was a big discussion up here that needed to be settled first. Got a little distracted. Got a lot of logistical things that come up as we keep growing, so I had to make a decision about some things real quickly there. Ha'maaseh v'hatruma, the tithe and the offerings. Now, we don't take up a formal offering here at the congregation. We do have an offering box over on the table. And for those of you on live stream, we do have donation buttons on our website, mtoi.org, and you're welcome to utilize those things. Okay, so the purpose of tithing, as we understand it, is to always put Yahweh first in our lives, also to help us appreciate his abundant blessings, as we taught in the tithing teachings. Blessed are you, Yahweh your Elohim, King of the universe, who made promises to us concerning the tithe and the offerings. May you open up the windows of heaven and pour out a blessing that cannot be contained as we walk in these mitzvot. Amen. Amen. All right. Announcements. Let's continue on the theme here of donations and supporting the ministry. We are Amazon partners, and so we are part of 2 programs with Amazon. We're part of the Amazon affiliate program, which means that we have a link to Amazon on our website that you can go ahead and click on. When you go there and click on our link will take you to Amazon. They will know we sent you there. They will generate, or you will generate by your purchases, a referral fee based on that, a couple of small, 1 or 2 or 3%, whatever, that they will give us as a referral fee for sending you there. We're also part of the Amazon Smile program, which is smile.amazon.com. And then you would type in the 4 letters MTOI, and then they would you would be designating us as the ministry or nonprofit you wish to support, and they would give us a portion of the purchase will be donated to MTOI to support the ministry. This is not something to do today, because there are people probably online right now going, why is he talking about business on Shabbat? I'm telling you something you could do not on Shabbat, okay? But you didn't maybe know. If you're a new person, look, we have over 600 computers logged on right now. I think it was 610 when Rob just told me a few minutes ago. And so some of those people may not know about these things, so we're just letting them know they're available. All right. I do want to welcome all the guests, and we do have guests here today, and we have guests online. We do want to make sure that we are being children of Abraham, that we are being hospitable, that we're helping you to feel welcome, so welcome to you guests. After service today, we do have our fellowship meal, our oneg, and you're all welcome to stay for that. Upcoming important dates, calendar stuff. Today after services, there will be a brief challah meeting for the challah team with Rebbe and Joanne. Okay, so after services, after the oneg, or how we can work it out, we'll be announcing it. If you are on the challah making volunteer team, Rebbe and Joanne would like to have a quick little meeting with all of you, especially for those of you that are going to be new to the team, but rather than tell each one individually, easier to tell everybody at the same time the things that she would like to give you in terms of guidelines, etc. So we're going to you'll meet with Rebbe and Joanne today. All right. Then tomorrow, and we don't have a slide for this yet, but then tomorrow, my announcements on Tuesday, we're going to be starting a new challenge. Now, we didn't get a chance yet to make a video for it. I had wanted to make a video for it, a little promotional thing. We might still get that out there. But we're doing a Psalm 119 challenge. Okay, last time we did this was a Hanukkah challenge a little while back. We used Psalm 119 as a challenge. So from tomorrow to the day before trumpets. So the 8th to the 29th inclusive, that's 22 days. And so you will have an opportunity to read the 22 verses of Psalm 119. It's broken up into 22 stanzas of 8 verses, okay? So there's 176 verses in the psalm, broken up into 8 verse sections. Not all Bibles do that, but you could just do the math and figure it out. It's based on the alphabet of the Hebrew alphabet, which is 22 letters. And so a lot of Bibles will actually designate, the first section is Aleph, the next one is Bet, and then Gimel and Dalet, etc., okay? So the encouragement then, what we'll be doing is you'll be reading that. The encouragement is to read that in the morning and then meditate on what you read and how would you have to be as a person to mean what you read. In other words, remember, this is David's heart speaking. This is David HaMelech, King David, speaking from his heart. So where would you have to be in your heart and your thinking to feel that way about whatever that 8-verse section is? And so I encourage you to do that in the morning, and then you could double check on yourself at the end of the day and see how you did, and were you able to maintain some sort of awareness of that piece of the way your heart might be towards Yahweh, and especially in Psalm 119 towards his law, towards the Torah, okay? Now, so that'll run starting tomorrow, and that'll take us right up to trumpets. I'll announce it again on Tuesdays and at the Torah studies. I'll announce it on Saturdays. Every Shabbat, we'll just keep reminding you to go through the process. Okay, so it starts tomorrow. Okay. Then, of course, Tuesday. Every Tuesday is our Torah study. Okay, Tuesday night's Torah studies right here, 8 o'clock Eastern Time. Next Saturday, next Shabbat, we will be doing our men's and women's meetings. Okay, we do that on an every other week sort of basis here. So we'll be doing that next Shabbat. Okay, on the 14th. And then on that Sunday, the 15th, is Leadership Day. So for all those in the leadership that come to the various meetings, we do have leadership meetings on the 15th. Okay, Sunday the 15th, so it's a week from tomorrow. And then, of course, September 30th is Rosh Hashanah. Okay, September 30th is Rosh Hashanah. Then, of course, October 9th is Yom Kippur. Okay. And then on the 8th, which is that Tuesday, and actually I should mention that there will be a Torah study on the Tuesday of October 1st after Rosh Hashanah. So we'll be doing our Torah study on the 1st, as well as, if we can, we'll also do something on the 8th. We're being a little equipment challenged, as we're going to have things broken down pretty quickly after that to pack and leave to get to Sukkot early, because we're setting up before that first Sabbath there and bringing the equipment and stuff, so we're figuring those logistical things out. But it's my intention at the moment to do something special on Tuesday night, the 8th, the night before Yom Kippur, and then Yom Kippur is on the 9th. Okay, those are days you need to have off from work. You need to have off September 30th and October 9th. And then Sukkot, which runs from the 14th to the 20th, with Shemini Atzeret the 21st. We're going to be getting there. Everybody should be there and checking in on the 13th. Okay, here's a nice little video. So it's got clips from everybody from last meeting at a different property, but the opening scene was the new property. So, so that was Ridgecrest. Okay, so you want to be there on the 13th, and you want to be checking out and leaving on the 22nd, okay? And so we should have that all worked out. So we'll be starting, our first thing that we're doing is having dinner together on the 13th, okay? Then we have, the whole thing starts on the 14th in the morning after breakfast, and we really get going. The schedule will be up hopefully this week. I've got it pretty much worked out. I just had to double check some things with the property as we were there finishing things. Oh, I know we need to add to prayer. We still do not have a place to do mikvah at Sukkot. So at the moment, I don't know that we're even going to be able to do that. This property doesn't have a place to do it on the property. We actually contacted the Y. They said no. Well, they've got other groups that are going to be on there. We're not going to be staying on their property. I can understand that, okay? So we contacted the property where it last, and it wasn't working. Most of what's available around there are streams and creeks that are just not deep enough to do it in, and they don't really have easy logical access. The nearest place that we could use is about almost an hour away. Okay, so or somewhere in that range. So we're still looking to see what we could do. In a pinch, if we really had to do it, we could all drive to Uncle Bob's property. He's got about a 2-acre pond, beautiful little beach going in, and we could work, but it's almost an hour drive. Okay, so it's 2 hours of time we would lose that day just to do that, and that's going to be rough, especially because we have a lot of people that aren't going to have transportation. They will have taken cabs or whatever from airports to get to the property, and we'll have to shuttle everybody, which is okay. I'm sure we can carpool because you'll have a lot more room in your vehicles without all the stuff you dragged with you to Sukkot. So you could put the people where the luggage was. No, I'm kidding. Okay, so some people thinking, but I only had a luggage rack. I'm not going to put them on the roof of my car. No, you don't understand what I'm saying. All right, so that being said, keep in prayer. That's the one piece of the puzzle we've not figured out yet, which is how we're going to do the mikvah at Sukkot. All right, now, I think that's going to cover it for the announcements. Oh, one more thing. We are working on an MTOI. Maybe you can, I don't know if you can zoom in on this, Austin. We're working on some sort of like a car window sticker or something. Is that what this is supposed to be? The window sticker, right? A window decal. Okay, so it's a window decal. So this is a sample of one that we just got to see how that would look. So you could have an MTOI window decal. So that's kind of cool. All right. All right, now, did you get it before I kind of put it down? Okay, good. All right, so let's go ahead and get reset for the teaching then, because you guys want a teaching? Yeah, Manny was telling me that last night he went looking around for other teachers out there just to scan around, and he found a bunch of them he liked better. No, no. He said I spoiled him, and now he's ruined. He can't watch anybody else. I apologize profusely, and but you guys want a teaching, huh? All right, so you guys enjoying this journey through the book of Ivrim, the book of Hebrews? Well, we're going to unravel some stuff today. If you have a phone, go ahead and turn that to silent, so make sure that's off. Okay. And we're going to be using the timer on the thing in front of me, right, Marty? Okay, good. So I don't need my timer. That works. Okay, so let me just go ahead and get settled here with today's teaching notes. Take another sip of water, then we're ready to go. Now, we didn't have a lot of time during prayer time, so we had saved a little time so I can go longer, right? No, I'm kidding. We'll just add that into the afterburn. Absolutely. Okay, here we go. All right, we ready back there? All right, hit the timer and we'll get started. All right, so today we are in Are You Covenanted part 54. All right, yay. Okay. And we're going to be heading into chapter 7 of the book of Hebrews. Now, just a reminder, this is really important as we go into chapter 7. So what has been going on here that I'm not going to go through the full review of what we've covered, but just the important piece here is that we're dealing with the difference, or in other words, the comparison between two priesthoods. This is the key focus now as we get into chapter 7. Now, starting at the beginning of the book, we've been talking about the fact that the context here is that during the siege of Jerusalem, around that time, this book would have been written, that there was a real serious concern that life as they knew it was going to change, because it was, but they weren't sure how that was going to work. In other words, everything revolved around the temple and the priesthood of the Levitical priesthood that was in the temple and those kind of functions, and now what were they going to do without that? And so a case is being made for Yeshua's place in the big picture of their lives and their lives individually as a community, the Hebrews. And remember, this is people that were understanding him as Messiah. They were getting a large part of him, but they weren't understanding the fullness of the relationship in terms of his priesthood now that he's sitting in the heavenly temple as the high priest. Okay? So we're starting to compare not only two priesthoods, the Levitical and the Melchizedekian, because Yeshua would not qualify as a Levitical, but we're also going to be comparing the two temples, the one here in the physical and the one in the heavenlies. And that's going to be the focus going from chapter 7, 8, 9, like that, okay? So just recognize that what we're comparing here are those things. It's not comparing Old Testament to New Testament or a different covenant to a different covenant. This is talking about the relationship to the people of two priesthoods and how they function in two different spaces. One is in the heavenly temple, and one is here in a physical temple, which is about to go bye-bye, right? They were about to be, just, lose the temple and lose that whole battle with the Romans. All right, now, and so as we go forward, keep that in mind. That's really important. We've already listed and listened to a lot of the argument and case we made for Yeshua's qualifications as high priest. That was a big part of chapters 5 and 6. And actually even earlier than that, as we go forward through this chapters, now we're going to get to chapter 7. The whole point of this was to get us eventually to verse 22 of chapter 7, where it was talking about this idea of a better covenant, okay? And so we're going to also deal with the idea in verse chapter 8. Well, we might not get to chapter 8. Well, let's just deal with chapter 7. Hopefully we might get to chapter 8. All right. So beginning here in chapter 7, let's start. He says, well, actually, the end of chapter 6, he reintroduces Yeshua as Melchizedek. He says, where Yeshua has entered as a forerunner for us, having become high priest forever according to the order of Melchizedek. Okay, so this is, now where has he entered? He entered into something in the heavenlies. He didn't enter into something here. Okay, so he's in this heavenly temple. Verse 1 of chapter 7. For this Melchizedek, or Melchizedek, sovereign of Shalom, priest of the Most High Elohim, who met Abraham returning from the slaughter of the sovereigns and blessed him, to whom also Abraham gave a 10th part of all, his name being translated indeed first, sovereign of righteousness, and then also sovereign of Shalom, that is sovereign of peace. So if you remember in Genesis, this is a reference to Genesis 14, verses 16 through 20. We're not going to turn there, 18 through 20. But just so you can mark it down, this refers again back to Genesis 14, where Abraham met with Melchizedek. And they broke bread and they had wine and he gave a tithe. Now bear in mind that Melchizedek is really a conjunctive word. It's Malki, which has to do with being the king, and Tzaddik, or righteous. So he translates here as sovereign or king of righteousness, good translation, but also sovereign of peace because that was the role of the Melchizedek. Okay? We also know that one of the names of Yeshua is Sar Shalom, or Prince of Peace. Okay? And we also know that he's coming as what? King of Kings, Master of Masters. It says, now let's understand, this is where we're going to get to some of the stuff that we need to unravel. It shouldn't be too tough. He says, so he's called the sovereign of righteousness and also the sovereign of Shalom, that is sovereign of peace, without father, without mother, without genealogy, having neither beginning of days nor end of life, but having been made like the Son of Elohim, remains a priest for all time. So let's talk about this. This refers to the position first and foremost. Now remember, not all things are going to be just one thing. So this section, first and foremost, is letting you know that we're dealing with a non-genealogy-based priesthood. Because a lot of arguments have been made, and I went to churches that said that this is talking about Yeshua because, after all, this person didn't have genealogy. Well, Yeshua has genealogy. He's like the firstborn or the first brought forth of a father. And he has a father. He has genealogy. The position is not genealogically based. That's the important thing here. Because the Levitical priesthood, the Kohanim, was very specifically genealogical based. Now, it wasn't just you had to be a Levite, you had to be literally a son of the Levite line known as Aaron's line. Okay, so you had to be out of the Aaronic line. But this priesthood is not genealogy restricted. You could be from any genealogical line and still be in the Melchizedekian priesthood. Okay? So here we have, we're being told that it's not genealogy-based, nor time-based. In other words, there always was and always will be a Melchizedekian priest. And so it's not a time basis, without father or mother, without beginning of days nor end of life. In other words, this is a role, a position that will always existed and will always exist. Are we following that in the simple Peshat? Now, of course, if you hadn't had the context all the way through here, that we were dealing with a battle between, or not so much a battle, but a comparison of two different priesthoods, you would miss the simple point here. If you weren't understanding that, hey, Well, I'm trying to make a case for Yeshua being a priest, and the people I'm talking to are thinking, but he's not a Levite. And I have to say, yes, I get that, because the priesthood he's part of doesn't require a genealogical lineage. Okay, that's all that's happening here, very simplistically. Now, of course, it's then linking it directly to Yeshua when it talks about having been made like the son of Elohim remains a priest for all time. Now we're linking specifically to the end of chapter 6 when it talked about Yeshua as the Melchizedekian priest. Okay? But notice that it always says, it never says he was Melchizedek. It says he was a Melchizedekian priest according to the order. He was a priest according to the order of Melchizedek. The order has no genealogy. The order is not time-bound. The position exists. Hopefully that unravels our first little issue for the day. Okay, let's continue in verse 4. So verse 3 was saying there is also a type and shadow issue going on here, pointing ultimate manifestation in Yeshua. Because now he is going to be the high priest forever. There will never be anybody else needing to be that high priest. He's that high priest. Okay? Do you understand he wasn't in that position prior? He'd been lots of things. He was the Word made flesh, everything else. It's only now that he's sitting as high priest. Okay? Verse 4, now see how great this one was, to whom even the ancestor Abraham gave a tenth of the choicest booty. So bear in mind here in verse 4, the high, almost extremely high level of reverence that the community of the Hebrews would have had for Abraham. We should have that kind of high esteem as well, but that's where they're saying, look, this one was so impressive, Abraham respected him to give him the tithe. And truly those who are of the sons of Levi, who receive the priesthood, have a command to receive tithes from the people, according to the Torah, that is, from their brothers, though they have come from the loins of Abraham. So now, we're getting this comparison. Melchizedekian priests received tithes from Abraham. Now we know about the Levites receiving tithes from their brothers. We're comparing the two. We're also told that the Levitical priesthood comes genealogically down through Abraham, connecting them together. He says, however, verse 6, right? However, the one whose genealogy is not derived from them received tithes from Abraham, and blessed the one who held the promises. So now he's trying to say it is appropriate, because remember, going forward, he's making a case now going forward that you can do now to the Melchizedekians like you were doing to the Levites. Because after all, that was being done even before there were Levites. Are we following that simplicity there? Because remember, they're having to transfer their thought process, their heart, their reliance, their trust, their dependency on a priesthood that's about to disappear, and transfer all of that onto the one that will remain forever. And he has to make a case that it's actually not breaking any laws, because remember, they're very law-based, right? They're Torah-based, covenanted people. It's not breaking any laws, and it's actually appropriate to give these things that you were giving to the Levites now to the Melchizedekians once there's no Levites. He's making that case. He says, however, the one whose genealogy is not derived from them received tithes from Abraham and blessed the one who held the promises. And it is beyond all dispute that the lesser is blessed by the better. And so now he's saying the Melchizedekian was higher than Abraham because the Melchizedekian priest blessed Abraham. Okay? And so he's saying, look, this is a higher level. So if the Melchizedekian priest is blessing Abraham, and it was out of Abraham's loins that eventually comes Levi, he's saying the Melchizedekian is higher. It is a superior place. But in respect to Yahweh's decisions and plans, it did not have a high position or even functioned in any high position while the Levitical was there. There was a change in the law, so to speak. In other words, a behavioral change that while the Levites were functioning, all that went to the Levites. The Melchizedekians did not receive those things. Okay? But he's saying now we're going to have to revert back to the original model because the Levitical one's about to go. So it's beyond dispute that the lesser is blessed by the better. And here it is men who die that receive tithes, but there it is someone of whom it is witnessed that he lives. So now we're seeing, but you're giving now to a leadership or a ministry that exists always. So he's trying to help make this transfer in their mind. This is hard. He's got to make a mind switch. All right? So the Aaronic and Melchizedekian priesthoods are going to be compared and contrasted here, and it will be explained here why the Melchizedekian is greater or better, or even just think of it maybe simply as preeminent. Okay? So greater or superior on some ways and preeminent. It preexisted the Levitical. Okay? Because that is important for them, because literally, remember, they're freaking out about the loss of the anchor of their life. Their lives are revolving around and anchored around the Levitical priesthood and the temple. Okay. Verse 9, and one might say that though through Abraham, even Levi who received tithes gave tithes, for he was still in the loins of his father while Melchizedek met him. So you have this again showing that while here, think of the hierarchy of this. The people gave their tithes to the Levites. The Levites gave a tithe to the Kohanim. Through Abraham, the Kohanim actually gave their tithes to the Melchizedek, if you think of it that way. The Melchizedek priesthood. Now, so you see how that kind of hierarchy, this is the argument that this person is making a case. It's not just a letter of comfort. He's making an argument, a case for where Yeshua and that priesthood belongs in their lives. Continuing. So it goes now to verse 11. Truly then, if perfection were through the Levitical priesthood, for under it the people were given the Torah, why was there still need for another priest to arise according to the order of Melchizedek and not be called according to the order of Aaron? That's the question. Okay, well, if everything was supposed to be perfect and done just with Levitical, why was there a need for another? So he's going to explain. He says, for the priesthood being changed of necessity, there takes place a change of the law also. In other words, there was a time when they gave the tithes and offerings to Melchizedek. Then they were told to give them to the Levitical. Now they're being told that you can go back and give them to the Melchizedek. These are adjustments by necessity. Not necessity saying, my boss says he'll fire me, so I have to work on Shabbat. That's not a necessity. That's not the same thing. Okay? Here we're talking about a can't. You won't be able to do anything with Levitical when there's no priesthood and there's no temple. Okay? And so a necessity also was that because they became a nation, and as a cohesive nation together in the land, they needed a body, a tribe to literally be their priesthood, rather than these individuals that were the Melchizedek priesthood, which was done through a process known as discipleship. Okay, the priesthood was passed down through elders and discipling. But then we get to, so that's where we have Moses, the 70 elders, etc. Noah did that with Abraham. Shem was doing that also. Shem was actually likely the one that was the Melchizedek that Abraham gave the tithes to. Shem was the high priest. Okay? Now, Marty, if this is going to work, it's only going to work if it stays on. Otherwise, I'm going to need my timer. Okay, so just so that we understand, it could be, it's back now. It just said it timed out, I guess. It's back now. All right, so just so that we understand what's going on here, okay, is that there's not a change like Yahweh changed, and the law has changed in that way. These are necessary adjustments because of functionality, because of the situation. They were individuals up to a point. Then they became a whole nation. Remember that this is that incredible miracle. What other God is it that ever took a nation out of a nation? That's one of the verses. A nation was taken out of a nation. Well, the nation needed more than just a few guys, like 70 guys helping, etc. They were going to need a priesthood. And the Levites, a whole tribe, was going to do this. But now we're about to lose that whole function. So let's understand what we're talking about here. Notice that it says, for the priesthood being changed. Now, when it says of necessity to take place a change of the law, let's be very simplistic, very pashat, literal. What changed? Priesthood. So what part of the law needed to change? Only the part that had to do with priesthood. Christianity would say, see, the law gets changed and done. No, this is all about 1,000,000%. Nothing else has been discussed here about except priesthood. The only issue at hand here is priesthood. And the only case is for the transference from Levitical to Melchizedek. So this doesn't affect Sabbath keeping, kashrut, eating foods, feast days. This doesn't affect anything in your Torah except the temple priesthood related stuff. And so yes, there was a necessity to change because after all, what are you going to do when there's no more? That's their whole panic. What do I do? There's not going to be a temple anymore. There's not going to be a priesthood. What are we going to do? This isn't their first battle with Rome, by the way. Okay? They've had others within the less than 100 years. It was 2 actually prior to this, around that. So they've got experience knowing we're in big trouble now. They've really decided they're going to come in here and wipe us down. Wipe us out, scatter us, whatever they're going to do. They can see the writing on the wall. All right? So for the priesthood being changed, that's the issue of necessity. There also becomes changes in how things are done. By law, we're talking about statutes, ordinances. In other words, who do you give the tithe to? Not whether or not you tithe. You see what I'm saying? There's adjustments to how things are done. Okay? Not whether they're done, but how they're done. Okay? That hopefully is clear. Verse 13. For he of whom this is said belongs to another tribe from which no one had attended at the altar. So he's specifically talking about looking now at Yeshua as high priest. That's the change that we're dealing with here. A Kohanim change to a Melchizedek high priest change. Okay? Let's make sure we are clear here. Because what? He belongs to another tribe for which no one had attended the altar. Who gets to attend the altar? Only the Levitical. You don't get to do this if you're from another tribe. What tribe was Yeshua from? Judah. Okay? Verse 14. For it is perfectly clear that our master arose from Yehudah, a tribe about which Moses never spoke of concerning the priesthood. Never, never, never spoke. Okay. That's a whole different thing. All right. It's perfectly clear. When you read this the first 1,000,000 times over your years as a Christian, was it perfectly clear? No. Because it would be if you had the right context, right? If you had read Hebrews in the simplistic context of what's going on, you would get it. But you also had to have an understanding of the Levitical priesthood, the Kohanim, the high priests, and everything else from the temple service from the Old Testament, from the Tanakh. If you didn't know, you wouldn't know. Okay. He says, it's perfectly clear that our master arose from Judah, a tribe about which Moses never spoke of concerning priesthood. Again, what is the point going on here in Hebrews chapter 7? It's all about priesthood right now. They called him Melchizedek. He's the high priest in the heavenly temple. And now they're trying to understand how this is going to work with him not being a Levite. And this is clearer still, in case it wasn't clear enough the first time, if another priest arises in the likeness of Melchizedek, who has become not according to the Torah of fleshly command, but according to the power of an endless life, for he does witness you are a priest forever, according to the order of Melchizedek. So now he's going back to that hierarchical thing, saying the Melchizedek priesthood is higher, superior, preeminent. So he's not saying that the fleshly one was bad and awful in this. It just wasn't as great as this one. This one is more fully developed. It's stronger. It's the higher manifestation of what it's supposed to look like. Okay? But of course, the Christian side of it's going to make it, take it as an attack on the fleshly Levite priests. Well, you're fleshly, right? Aren't we still fleshly? You can grab and pinch yourself. You're still here. Yeshua is no longer in the flesh. Yeshua is sitting in the heavenlies. So he's got his position according to the power of an endless life. For he does witness you are a priest forever according to the order of Melchizedek. By the way, this is a quote from Psalm 110, verse 4, just in case you're wondering where that's coming from. For there is indeed a setting aside of the former command because of its weakness and unprofitableness, for the Torah perfected nothing but the bringing in of a better expectation through which we draw near to Elohim. Oh, brother. So what's that? Okay. The Torah did not perfect anything, though itself was perfect. Let's understand. It didn't perfect anything. Was anybody that ever walked Torah perfect? Were they made perfect because of it? No. Only one being has ever walked this earth that was perfect, and he did walk the Torah perfectly. The Torah is not the fault. It's the fleshly person trying to walk it. But he's trying to say that, look, the Torah, just because you kept Torah, the Torah didn't perfect anything. Okay, the Torah doesn't, that's not what it's there to do. It's to teach you how to develop a right way to love Him, your Creator, and to love each other, and to develop the integrity to make the adjustments when you fall short. That's a Deuteronomy 8:2 test, right? That He's testing us to humble us to see whether it's in our heart to keep His commandments or not. So he's saying here that the Torah didn't perfect anything, though in itself it was perfect. It itself was perfect. What it did do was bring in a better expectation through drawing near to Elohim. Follow that here. Okay? For the Torah perfected nothing but the bringing in. What it did was it brought in a better expectation. Before you had Torah, what kind of expectation did you have? Death. Nothing. But now, because of Torah, you have a better expectation. A better future potential. You see? Through which we draw near to Elohim. So the purpose of Torah was to do what? Help you develop this expectation so that you would draw nearer to Elohim. We're good so far? We're following this. He said, now bear in mind that in verse 18 it said, there is indeed a setting aside of the former because of its weakness and profitableness. Look, it couldn't stop the Romans. It couldn't perfect the Israelites, which is why Rome was allowed to come in the first place. Because had Israel done what they were supposed to do, they would have been protected always. Okay? So it's not that the law was weak or unprofitable. We're going to see later it's because the people were weak and didn't profit from it. They failed in it. Remember, the promises said, if you keep this covenant, obey everything that comes out of my mouth, you will never be in fear. No one will ever molest you. Nobody will ever harm you. You won't have to worry about other nations coming in and destroying or doing. You will be protected. So why didn't it profit? Because of the weakness and unprofitableness of it towards people that were weak. If you're weak, it's of no use. I can teach you. And you know what? I'm going to use definitely a specific example. I teach people in counseling all the time things that will help them improve their lives. And when I do that, I always tell them the same thing. I'll give them 2 or 3 techniques, and I can guarantee the techniques work, but only if you do them, right? Now, if you don't do them, those techniques would have proven to be unprofitable because of your weakness. You see how that's just like the law? I give people things to do. And if you can do the same thing, if you're teaching your child or if you're happen to be counseling, you give somebody something to do that you know works. But if they don't do it, it won't work. So I want you to understand, it's the people here that are the problem. Now, because the Torah perfected nothing in weak people, unless they would submit to it and then become stronger people. Now, and it was not without an oath. For they indeed became priests without an oath, but he became priest with an oath by him who said to him, Yahweh has sworn and shall not regret, you are a priest forever according to the order of Melchizedek. So this verse 21 reminds us who we're talking about. So who were weak and unprofitable, etc. with Torah? The priesthood. And we know the priesthood, by the time we get to Yeshua, are the bought and paid for cronies of Rome. These are not, as a matter of fact, they're not even the appropriate Aaronic ones. We've got some problems with the priesthood being from the wrong line. They're Levites, but they're not Aaronic. And so here, he reminds us we're still talking about priests. We're not talking about everybody. And we're not talking about a problem with the law. He said, indeed, they became priests without an oath. In other words, Yahweh didn't say, you're a priest forever. He said, I'm going to choose the Levites from among them. They will be my priests. And they will be, as generationally, that tribe will provide priests forever. But he didn't say you individually, because you are weak and you are flesh. When he says, he says, you are a priest forever according to the order of Melchizedek. He's talking about an individual now. He's talking about Yeshua. Because he's perfect. He says, for they indeed became priests without an oath, but he, with an oath, by him who said to him, Yahweh has sworn and shall not regret, you are a priest forever according to the order of Melchizedek. By as much as this Yeshua has become a guarantor of a better covenant. Okay, now we're going to get into this. He's become the guarantor of a better covenant. Now, I'm not going to have time, and I'm not going to take the time, and I apologize, to go into every Greek word and explain to you what the Greek word means from that point on. I'm just going to tell you, in my research, this is a better translation of the Greek word. Okay, the Greek for better here is more accurately translated as better because it is more fully developed. Well, that's a whole different idea. Not better because the other one was bad, or awful, or this, or wrong, or useless. No, it is more fully developed, or stronger, or with a sense of being nobler, or reaching the needed dominion or level of mastery. So it's the next level. It's not that was bad, throw it away, it was a curse, you couldn't do it anyway, blah, blah, blah. He's now the guarantor of a better, more nobler, higher level of mastery, reaching this other level of dominion, this better, more fully developed covenant. Wow. Now that's a whole different thing than you're hearing on Sunday. Because after all, he's the guarantor of a better covenant, which means the other one wasn't good. No, this one is just more fully developed. It means that it's built upon. Wasn't there a Noahic covenant or an Adamic covenant or an Abrahamic covenant? Was there anything wrong with those covenants? No, but each one had to become more fully developed. It was stronger, not weaker. And then when you get to the Mosaic covenant, it's much more fully and detailed out in its development. And now we're building on that to the next level, which makes this a better covenant. It doesn't disrespect the previous. There's never a disrespect for the Noahic, the Mosaic, or the Abrahamic, then the Mosaic. Never in each one does it say, well, that Noah one was terrible and stupid. We're going to have now the Mosaic one. Okay? So why does Christianity do this to the Mosaic one? Because they don't want to keep the law. So they disrespect the law. I'll say it again. The Greek word here for better it's not, look, if you speak any other language, you can't just go word for word, language for language. Sometimes it takes a sentence to say what that word means in one language in the other language. So this word translated as better is actually better translated, okay, as the way I described it as being better because it's more fully developed. Better because it's stronger, nobler, it's reached a needed dominion level. Now that you've reached this level, you can go on to the next level, is what it's saying. The next level, by the way, okay, if you're in a building, if you're on the first floor, can you go to the second floor by getting rid of the first floor? Can you build the second floor on nothing? It's built on the first floor. Okay? That's what it's saying. It's like you've reached the level of mastery here. You're now ready for the next level. Wow, that's some cool stuff. And we've been building up to this now for a couple of weeks because this is a great understanding of what a better covenant is. He says, now you Hebrews who believe in Messiah, with the temple being destroyed, you are now ready in their level of mastery to go to the next level, which is built upon all the previous levels. I hate to use a martial arts example, okay? But when I got to be a black belt, well, before that, when I first started off as a white belt and I got to be a yellow belt, guess what I was expected? To know everything that a white belt knew, but I was ready to learn the yellow belt stuff. When I was ready to go to green belt, I wasn't expected to look at the yellow belt stuff as dumb and wasteful. No, it was foundational, and I had to master it so I could handle the green belt stuff. Now, a lot of you out there are freaking out thinking martial arts is all pagan and everything else. Well, you can calm that all down. I'm just making a point. Don't miss the point. See, all that blue emotional stuff, calm down, don't miss the point. Okay? The point is that it took a level of mastery for me to now be able to learn the next stuff built on what I had mastered. Or I would not be able to master the new stuff. But in mastering it, I didn't throw away and discard the old stuff because it was foundational to the new stuff. Now we starting to get it? So in order to be ready for this higher level of covenant, this better, by being more fully developed, this higher level of mastery, you need to have mastered the other. What's the other? The whole Mosaic thing. Don't think you're going to go into the Yeshua thing if you haven't mastered the Mosaic thing. And by mastered it, it doesn't mean now that you mastered it, you throw it away, you don't need it anymore. No, now you've got it down so well, you do it just like breathing. That's what mastery is. You now do it without thinking. It's part of who you are. Okay? This is what we're talking about. So he's saying here, look, by as much, remember, this is the one who he swore an oath, and he said, you are a priest forever, by as much as this Yeshua has become the guarantor. This one who had the oath, this one who is of the Melchizedekian, he's become the guarantor of a better, more fully developed, needing a higher level of mastery, stronger covenant. And indeed, those that became priests were many because they were prevented by death from continuing, but he, because he remains forever, has an unchangeable priesthood. In other words, they had to have a lot of priests because they kept dying off and they needed more, and they would die off and they would need more because they were flesh. He says, but we have one high priest. Remember, we talking about priesthood here. There was a rotation. Remember that? The high priest had a rotation. And depending on the order they were in, they served for so many weeks, and then they had the next. They took turns because, after all, that burden was tough on a fleshly person to have one job, one person. And what if something happened to the one person? Somebody else could step in. He's saying, hey, look, those that became priests were many. They needed a lot because they were prevented by death from continuing. They weren't going to live forever. But he, because he remains forever, has an unchangeable priesthood. Wow. This is now we're getting more of a comparison between Levitical and Yeshua as Melchizedekian high priest. Therefore, remember how much we love those therefores. Based on all the things we just said, therefore he is also able to save completely those who draw near to Elohim through him, ever living to make intercession for them. 24/7, 365, blah, blah, blah. The fleshly priesthood couldn't do that. Okay? So that's a more fully developed, higher level of covenant with a higher level guarantor. Or I should say, mediator. Because really the better idea is, and we're going to talk later, is the idea of him being a mediator. Okay? Now, where was I? 26. For it is fitting that we should have such a high priest. So now again, we're only talking about priesthood, specifically high priest. All through this stuff, starting the whole chapter 7 is all about high priest, whether it's Levitical or Melchizedek. He says, it's fitting that we should have such a high priest, kind, innocent, undefiled, having been separated from sinners and exalted above the heavens, who does not need, as those high priests, to offer up slaughter offerings day by day, first for his own sins and then for those of the people. For this he did once for all, that when he offered up himself. So he doesn't have to do the same. He doesn't need a temple, a fleshly one like we had down here, to do these kind of offerings. For the Torah appoints as high priests men who have weakness. Let's go back to when it talks about weakness in verse 18. Because of weakness and unprofitableness, now he's talking about it, he explains himself in verse 28. The Torah appoints high priests men who have weakness. So the problem was the men, not the Torah. But the word of the oath, which came after the Torah, appoints the Son having been perfected forever. Now, this is also translated badly, verse 28. I'm going to give you my translation of that. I'm going to read that whole sentence. Follow along in your book, but listen to me read it. For the Torah appoints as high priests men who have weakness, and the word of the oath behind the Torah appoints a time, age for the Son to accomplish or complete it. That's actually what it says in the Greek, in a much better translation. So when it says the Son having been perfected forever, it misses the point. It really has to do with a time or an age to accomplish or complete. Because that's the process we're in. We're in a process of it being accomplished and completed. The Torah appoints as high priests men who have weakness, and the word of the oath behind the Torah. See, that's another thing is here it says came after. No, the Greek actually has a better idea of it being the support, or the behind, the developmental piece, the reason behind, the Torah behind the oath. The oath behind the Torah. What happened? Abraham was given an oath. Then we find other places where there are promises or an oath. The Torah is a manifestation built on that oath. The oath was also to Yeshua being a high priest forever. We read that in Psalm 110. Okay? So we're seeing how this is all layered. The oath is superior. It predates. It's a predecessor to the giving of the Mosaic commands. And by the way, Deuteronomy, we're told, don't think you guys are so awesome. You get to be where you are because of a promise or an oath made to Abraham. So the oath underlies why we got all the things that we got, why he wanted to give us the covenant, why he wanted to give us the law, because it was part of fulfilling an oath. Okay? For the Torah appoints as high priests men who have weakness, and the word of the oath behind the Torah appoints a time or an age, because that's what the idea of an olam, a time or a period of time or an age for the Son to accomplish and complete it. Wow. That's not what it says in most of your translations. I know it. I'm sorry. Okay? That tripped me up for many a year because I didn't go and read the Greek and figure out in the context what this was talking about. Let me say it again. The Torah appoints, I put a comma there. There's no punctuation in Greek, but this way we can get the phrasing. Okay? The Torah appoints as high priests men who have weakness, comma, and the word of the oath behind the Torah, comma, appoints a time or an age for the Son to accomplish and complete it. That is so awesome. Changes everything. Okay. And by the way, that also, by saying it the way I just read it to you, means that it has not yet been completed or accomplished. For all those who want to say it's done, it's finished, and blah, 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 blah. Because that includes all the things that he now as high priest is still doing. But when it reads it this other way, it talks about the Son having been perfected forever, like somehow it's the Son being perfected. No, it's giving him a time to finish and accomplish and complete something. The Greek really doesn't have as good a... I don't know why the word for the perfect is there. It's really not a real good word translation for the Greek there. Okay? So it really has the idea of accomplishing or completing something. Okay? Good. Wow. Now you ready for... Now we should go to chapter 8. Now the summary of what we are saying. Interesting that the person who wrote this realized he needed to recap, because he threw so much at them up to this point. He says, the summary of what we are saying is, we have such a high priest who is seated at the right hand of the throne of the greatness in the heavens, and who serves in the set-apart place. This is the heavenly Mishkan, the heavenly temple, and of the true tent which Yahweh set up, and not man. For every high priest is appointed to offer both gifts and slaughters, so it was also necessary for this one to have somewhat to offer. So hopefully we're starting to understand. So this is a summary of Yeshua as high priest in the heavenly temple, the first 5 verses here. For if indeed he were on earth, he would not be a priest, since there are priests who offer the gifts according to the Torah, who serve a copy and shadow of the heavenly, as Moshe was warned when he was about to make the tent. For he said, see that you make all according to the pattern shown you on the mountain. So the writer here is saying that Moses wasn't just shown a pattern like in writing, that he actually got to see a vision of what the heavenly temple looked like. Not that he physically got to be taken there, but he got to see this is what it looks like. But remember, he said, look, we're comparing in this whole book of Hebrews that all this thing that they're panicking about is not to be diminished, not to be offended or assaulted or whatever, or to minimize, but he's saying, look, what we're dealing with is a copy and a shadow. It's still important. It's still to be respected, but it's only, to put him in the right perspective, a copy and a shadow. Yeshua is sitting in the real one, as the high priest in the real one. We were dealing with, and they were dealing with the copy and a shadow. What do you do with the copy? You practice. Okay? What do we do with the feasts every year? We're practicing. Can we really do it exactly according to Torah? No, we need a temple. We need a priesthood. We need to be in Jerusalem, more or less. Okay? I mean, there are things. So we are practicing because we are not in the real. Okay? As a matter of fact, this life isn't really life. It's practicing. We're in the copy and the shadow of real life. This is still just a shadow of things to come, right? He says, okay, so we serve a copy and shadow of the heavenly. Now the key word there is serve. They're still to serve it. And he's talking only about the priesthood still again. We serve that copy, as Moshe was warned. He says that there was a greater one, the one seen on the mountain. But now he, Yeshua, has obtained a more excellent service as a priest in that temple, inasmuch as he is also mediator of a better covenant, which was constituted on better promises. So Yeshua obtained a different, in other words, this implies a more superior service than the Levitical priesthood in verse 6. Okay? And it's also talking about Yeshua being the mediator or go-between of a more fully developed or stronger covenant on the basis of a more fully developed and stronger promise. And that's where the word better actually gets translated, okay? So he's saying, look, you guys are now ready in your level of mastery to deal with this mediator of this more fully developed covenant and more fully developed promises. Now, it's not that the promise is not the same promise, but we're getting to, our understanding of it is now being more fully developed so we can appreciate what was going on. Like when Abraham was told, you are going to be the father of many goyim, many Gentiles, many nations. Do you think he had any idea what that really meant? Probably not. But over time, we see that understanding become more fully developed. Not that the promise gets changed at all, but what's getting developed is our understanding of it. So we're getting a much more fully developed understanding of the whole plan of everything, and now we're ready in our level of mastery through all of the teaching and the training for the 4,000 years up to this point when this writer is writing to say, hey, now we're ready for our high priest to sit in the heavenlies and bring us to this more fully developed, stronger understanding of covenant and of the promise. Wow. Okay? Very important. I keep looking down here to my phone when I got to remember to look up there for the timer. Okay. So Yeshua is now the mediator, the go-between. Remember, the high priest was like a mediator or go-between. Yeshua is now in that role. This is still comparing high priest roles. Okay, the Kohanim, the Kohen HaGadol, the high priest, did this. Yeshua is Kohen HaGadol, so to speak, of the Melchizedekian. He's the high priest. This is how he does it. Okay? So the person who's writing is wanting to say, you lose nothing. You had this before, you have this now, it's just more fully developed. It's just more complete. It's just the level of mastery is ready to take us to another level of how we would do this. Okay? By the way, this is happening not the minute after Yeshua was resurrected. Nowhere in this letter does the guy say, what's wrong with you, you idiots? When Yeshua died and was resurrected, we weren't supposed to need a temple anymore. Where's that verse? We weren't supposed to need to do sacrifices. Sacrifices were done away with. What's wrong with you? What are you, thick-headed? No, these people are being given instruction only now when there will not be a temple. By necessity now there's a change. And then they're saying, now you're ready to learn about your high priest in the heavens. Now you're ready to learn what the shadow was pointing to. Now you're ready for the next step in your developing your understanding, not altering and changing law. Hopefully that makes some sense. Okay? Where did I leave off? Verse 6 we read. Okay, now, let's understand verse 7. For if that first had been faultless, and a lot of your translations says covenant. That's not anywhere in the Greek. That's an inserted word. So we don't know what to put there necessarily. It says, for if that first had been faultless, then no place would have been sought for a second for finding fault with them. Now we know what we need to put in the blank. For if the first, priesthood, ministry, whatever, the first priesthood had been faultless. Because he says finding fault with them, not with it, not with the law, not with the covenant, not with the promise, not with the system. So be careful. If you've got an italicized word, don't just assume it's right. It's probably got the highest level, not always, but it's got a higher level of being mistranslated than the non-italicized because it's a word that the Greek doesn't even have or the Hebrew doesn't have. It's a missing word that somebody's filling in as a language translation because the word in the Greek or the Hebrew might imply something, but it doesn't overtly say it, so they're filling in a blank. So when you see in my translation it says, for if that first, and the word covenant is italicized, I can tell you when I went to look at the Greek, it's not there. For if that first had been faultless, and so what are we talking about, the first versus the second? So we're talking about the first temple, man-made stuff, the first priesthood, the shadow, the copy. If it had been faultless, then no place would have been sought for a second. For finding fault with them, he says, see the days are coming. Says Yahweh when now this is going to be direct quotes out of Jeremiah 31, verses 31 to 34. He says, see the days are coming, says Yahweh, when I shall conclude with the house of Israel and the house of Judah a renewed covenant. In other words, I shall bring and put into place a new covenant. I shall make, consummate, bring together. Now this word conclude is poorly translated there. Because if you look at Jeremiah 31 and 31, it says, I shall renew a covenant with the house of Israel and the house of Judah. Not according to the covenant that I made with their fathers in the day when I took them by the hand to lead them out of the land of Mitzrayim, because they did not continue in my covenant, and I disregarded them, says Yahweh, because this is the covenant that I shall make with the house of Israel after those days. This is pretty much a good straightforward quote from 31 through 34. He says, this is the covenant that I shall make with the house of Israel after those days. Notice it's no longer house of Israel and house of Judah, because at that point the two sticks of Ezekiel 37 have come together. Okay, they're now coming together. They're one house, not two. The kingdom is being restored under one that's called Israel. Everybody's getting to be calling themselves an Israelite, not a Jew, not a whether a Reubenite or an Ephraimite or a Menashite or Zebulun. No, Israel. Okay, there's no two kingdoms. We're all Israel now. He said, I'm going to make after those days, says Yahweh, giving my laws in their mind, and I shall write them on their hearts, and I shall be their Elohim, and they shall be my people. He's not talking here at all in any way, shape, or form. Can you even remotely conclude he's talking about anything different than the Torah? Jeremiah 31 is not talking about all of a sudden getting a new, different set of laws. He's talking about the laws that they failed to keep. And so this is a direct quote out of Jeremiah. This is not some New Testament, new covenant, new whatever, new age thing. He said, I'm going to have it be so it's in their mind and it's going to be on their heart, so they're going to do it like breathing. They're going to do it because it's a part of them. I'm going to cause them through experience and through trials and tribulations to make choices to break their self-sovereign, stiff-necked positions, their hard-hearted positions, and cause them to choose to submit. And submission is the biggest problem in Scripture everywhere. He says, and I shall write them on their hearts, what? These laws, giving my laws. What laws? The laws of the Torah. And they shall Be my people. I shall be their Elohim, and they shall be my people. And they shall by no means teach each one his neighbor and each one his brother, saying, Know Yahweh, because they shall all know me, from the least of them to the greatest of them. Because I shall forgive their unrighteousness and their sins and their lawlessness, I shall no longer remember. Now, bear in mind, he's quoting something that has not yet happened at this point. This is after Yeshua by a good number of years being resurrected. Okay, this is about 40 years later. And so for anybody who says that somehow, Yeshua brought in and ushered in and it was the fulfillment of Jeremiah 31, we still haven't had it be to the point where nobody will have to tell his brother or his neighbor, know Yahweh, because they'll all know him. Does everybody you know Yahweh? Sometimes I wonder if anybody I know knows Yahweh. Because remember, knowing is relational. Oh, informationally, a lot of people think they know him. But relationally, he's saying, look, no one is going to have to teach his neighbor or his brother, saying, have a relationship, have that relationship properly with Yahweh, because they all shall have a relationship with me. From the least of them to the greatest of them. By saying renewed, he has made the first old. Now what becomes old and growing aged is near disappearing. So what is he saying? He's saying, look, there needs to be a renewing. Israel broke the old one. We still have some fragments of the observances of it being done. Torah is being kept. There is a temple. He said, but that thing is near disappearing. Not the Torah. The people keeping it and the temple that was a part of it. Because everything up to this point has been about priesthood and temple. It's not about all the other 600 and whatever laws, okay? Although a lot of them are priesthood and temple related. Okay, so the other 500 or so laws, all right? It's not talking about that. See, but Christianity wants to insert whatever they want to insert in their way of filtering through this stuff. Everything we've talked about since chapter 1 is about one specific aspect of law, which is the temple and priesthood, if you want to put them together. So you can say two. The temple and the priesthood, which really is combined into one thing. That is the only issue here in Hebrews. And you've heard me on other teachings say over and over again, if you don't understand context, you'll never understand the book of Hebrews right. Now, hopefully you see why. Okay? Because you can't possibly understand this thing correctly if you don't have the right context. Let's make sure we're not forgetting that everything consistently, without exception, from chapter 1 till now has been about Levitical priesthood, Melchizedekian priesthood, Kohanim of the Levites, and High Priest Yeshua of the Melchizedek. The temple in the shadow of the copy that we have here, and the temple in heaven. That's all this has been about. It's not been about kashrut. I don't know how you eat. It's not been about holy days. It's not been about Sabbath keeping. It's not been about honoring mother and father or murder or stealing or adultery. It's not been about any other piece of the law. The only thing at issue here is temple and priesthood. And what he's saying is there hasn't been a doing away with. There's a transference to the higher, better one that always was there. That's different than what the Christianity would say, well, that's done away with. We don't need it. It's old. It's wrong. It's bad. No, we're still doing all the same things. We just don't have the sacrificial, physical sacrificial system going on without a temple. But we still have a high priest. We still make tithes and offerings. We're told that we could bring it to the Melchizedekian priests. Because remember, there was a fleshly one that met with Abraham, and he gave his tithe. And that goes to all you people out there online. Oh, there's a lot of you that want to buy into because you really don't like to give your money to anybody. You want to be, I told you, tithing is going to either expose a finance problem or a selfishness problem. Okay? And so here is an argument, excuse me, here is an argument made, and we read that in verse 6 of chapter 7, that there was tithes that were given through Abraham to Melchizedek. I mean, the Levitical tithes were given to Melchizedek. And so, yes, it's appropriate to go find yourself a Melchizedekian priest person and give them your tithes. Because people will say, well, we're only supposed to give it to the Levites. Well, you didn't understand the book of Hebrews at all, did you? You didn't understand Genesis, did you? Okay. How much time we got? Good. All right, so back now here. So we're getting now into chapter 9, which I have no notes for, but we're just going to rock forward here. So do we understand Well, you know me. I always like to have notes. No, I don't. Okay, so let's understand that this is trying to tie together in chapter 8 the Jeremiah 31 mentioning and describing of this new covenant thing, a renewing of covenant, and applying it in part to what's going on. This is part of that process of renewal, the fact that there was going to be a change in priesthood. That we were now going to be ready in our level of mastery to go up to the next level. Not our level of mastery to reject the previous levels, but now to build upon. Of course, if you're still struggling on the milk, which was also talked about here in Hebrews, you're still on the first floor or still with the white belt or whatever you want to use as your metaphor, struggling, learning how to, make a fist properly and hold your hands right as opposed to actually blocking anything. And that's the point. Because if you didn't learn how to properly hold your body or make a fist or block something, when somebody comes to hit you, you won't be able to do it. That's the metaphor from that physical thing. A lot of our children are now in our MTOI Academy, our brand new school, and a lot of them are taking math. You know what you need to know in math? A lot of them are taking like algebra now and advanced, more advanced mathematics, and some of them are struggling with some of the aspects at times. I'm not picking on our students. None of them told me this. I'm guessing that this might be happening, okay? So other students, I don't want them to get mad saying I exposed something. But you know what? If your basic math was a struggle, and you didn't build a strong enough foundation in your basic, especially order of operations, those kind of things, you're not going to be able to do the more advanced because you didn't master the basic. How are you going to do this more advanced if you still are wanting to reject or struggling with the basic? That's the point. That's why I'm glad we got to redefine verse 22 as being stronger, more fully developed, and needing a higher level of mastery to now go into. But the mastery is of the previous. You have to master the old before you go to the new. I was a sensei. I had a school. This is 1987. It's a long time ago. But my students, we didn't test them on a schedule. We tested them when I looked at them and I said, you're ready. When I felt they had mastered the stuff. If I didn't, they had to wait. They'd be upset because their friends were moving up. I said, fine, then spend the time and master it. This is not like school. This whole life of Torah observance in the context of Messiah is not like school. We're not going for a passing grade of a C and thinking I'm going to get in. We're going for A's and mastery. Our school is teaching to mastery. I'm not, to all you students in the academy, I don't care what your grades are initially. I want you to keep doing it till you perfect it. You must master your stuff. School systems in the public school system don't do this. They just want you to get grades. And you could actually take courses on how to get a better grade and still not learn anything. I took a class on how to pass my French Regents exam. Regents exam is a New York State thing. Okay, so it's like a mastery test to see if you've mastered a subject that you take as a senior in high school. And I was lousy at the class because I had lousy teachers to start with and had a lousy foundation. But I was able to take a course that taught me how to pass the test to the point where they thought I cheated on the test because I got such a great grade on the test because I said, no, I took a course on how to pass the test. Because all people cared about was the grade. So there are people out there that will teach you how to get the grade and still not know anything. I knew zero more French after I took the course, but I knew how to pass the test and get a passing grade. That's the system we live in. You need to master the covenantal obligation of doing what he says. You need to master how to walk in the fruit of the Ruach. You need to master how to keep the Torah commandments so that it becomes, like he said, I'm going to write it in their minds and on their hearts. In other words, it becomes like a thoughtless meaning you don't have to think. It happens automatically. Okay? I'm sure that was something that was taught if you were in the military. It was taught in the martial arts. You want to get to the point where you can do without thinking. It's an automatic response because if you have to think, you're dead. It's too late. And if you're thinking when it comes to Torah observance, it's the same thing. The more you think, the more you are getting involved because you're thinking. Okay? And as soon as you get involved, you're in trouble. Because then you start to rationalize to yourself because you got yourself involved in the mix. But if you've gotten yourself so disciplined and trained, there's no thinking. Okay, someone goes to put something in front of you shouldn't have, there's no thought. You don't do it. Your boss says, I need you to work on Saturday, there's no thought. You're not doing it. But as soon as you start thinking, you start to lie to yourself and justify and excuse or whatever. We need to get to the place where this is on autopilot. In other words, you've learned it, you've studied it. Look, do you really think a whole lot? Think about all of you that have been driving for 15, 20, 30 years. Sometimes you get home, you don't even remember driving. But you remember, if you can go back far enough, can you remember when you first got in the car and you're like looking at the mirrors, and looking at this, where's the gas, where's the brake? But now you do all of that without thinking because you realize in an emergency, if someone cut you off, you would have gotten killed if you had to think about hitting the brake. But your foot hit it before you, almost as soon as you even had the possible thought. You reacted, okay? But I don't want you to be fully reactive without any kind of thought. What you're doing is you're proactively creating that habit. Proactively developing the reactive response so that it's not requiring your emotional or intellectual involvement. Hey, I need you to come in on Saturday. I appreciate that, but I can't do it. There's not a thought of trying to figure out how to make it work or how to spin it. See, that's when you are thinking. Go back to the teaching. What are you thinking? I had to mention the teaching in there somewhere, so. Okay? Is this starting to make sense? Okay? Now, I know we covered a lot. We're going to get into chapter 9. 9 goes into a large description about some of the differences, again, with the priesthoods and functions and that kind of stuff. And we will get, hopefully, into that here next time. I'm looking at the clock. Perfect timing to finish. So we're just going to go ahead and wrap it up with prayer. Avinu Malkeinu, our Father, our King. Father, we're going to really need to take the time to allow everything we learned today to sink in. Help us to patiently listen to this more than once. Read your word as it really reads, as opposed to the way we've been taught to read it. Understand the simplicity, the Peshat understanding of these things. And understand that we have to come to the level of mastery before we even have the audacity to think we're ready for the better, the more fully developed, the stronger promises and covenant that Yeshua brings. So, Father, help us to have humility. Help us to get off the throne and let you sit. Help us to submit to everything you're showing us so that truly, Father, we can have you write these things on our minds and in our minds and in our hearts so that we truly can be your people and you can truly be our Elohim. So we can truly know you, have a relationship with you. Father, we are so appreciative that we have such a high priest. We're so appreciative that we have a high priest who's a high priest forever in the true and the heavenly temple, not the copy in the shadow. We're so appreciative that we have such a mediator, a go-between on our behalf. Help us to be in line with all that. Help us to be worthy of all that. Help us to truly embrace and appreciate all of what that means in our lives. Father, we just are humbled by this. We're overwhelmed with the relationship that you allow us to, that you open up and allow us to have an opportunity to be a part of. And so, Father, we want to thank you. We want to praise you and want to give you all glory and all honor in the name above all names, Yeshua, our high priest and our Messiah. Amen. 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 Not often we get finished right where I wanted to finish. That was good. Fantastic. Okay, look, there's an awful lot you're getting to have to re-understand in this book. Okay? And a lot of it's bad translations, a lot of it's being well-churched, a lot of it. There's a lot of stuff. But hopefully we're now starting to understand this idea of a better covenant. All right? I watched the guy on YouTube. Man, I wish I could remember his name. I can't think of his name, but he's like somewhere from like a South Pacific island or something. He dresses like he's a rock star, wears like leather jackets and stuff or whatever. But he was all saying and attacking the law and says, you're wrong to do the law. Who's that? Yes, Joe, what's his name? Joseph Prince. He actually made it sound like, no, he actually came right out and told you were in sin if you tried to keep the law. And he quoted out of Hebrews, says, because it's better. It's a better covenant because the other one was bad. No, this one's better because the other one was not as fully developed. This one's better because you had to master the other one before you could even get to this one. This one's better, the other one's not bad. It's just better. But there are guys out there actively telling you that your attempts to keep Torah is sin. So say you've fallen from grace. Of course, if grace is merited favor, you've fallen from grace if you don't keep Torah. I got it backwards. Perhaps we'll end up in Galatians one of these days and we'll do the same thing to Galatians we just did to Hebrews. Okay? So, and again, I shouldn't say, well, we'll do the same. Hopefully he'll allow me the opportunity to open my mind to that stuff as I'm going through. Everything I taught you about Hebrews in the last 4 or 5 weeks, most of that stuff is stuff he showed me this last few weeks. Okay? Which is why generally I didn't do a lot of using the book of Hebrews, because he hadn't really given me the green light to go and really rip it apart and open it up and have me see, what I needed to see. So we're all learning it together. Okay? And so hopefully we're now starting to see that whole thing, same thing with him appointing a time or an age for the Son to accomplish and complete at the end of chapter 7. Some really cool stuff. All right. And I'm not being prideful to say that. I'm not impressed with me. I'm impressed with the stuff he's allowing me to say and giving me to say, because I'm enjoying it and I'm as impressed as you are with it, not because it's me, but because it's him. Okay? So I like to go back and listen, because he has me saying stuff sometimes that are not even in my notes. And I go, that is really cool stuff. It's him, not me. I'm impressed with him. Okay? The only thing, if anything you want to be impressed with me, is my willingness to get out of the way and let him do it. Okay, that part I'll take, because I'm very willing to let him say whatever he needs to say when I'm up at the mic. No filter. I just get out of the way. All right, so this is the Afterburn time. So if you're wanting to make a comment or have a question, if you're on live stream, please be respectful of the fact that this is not an open forum for everybody to push their arguments, agendas, or websites, or ministries, or any of that stuff. But this is MTOI's and Beth Shalom's, Sabbath service. And allow leadership to answer questions. They may want to direct people towards a teaching to answer a question. Allow that. This is not a place for those kind of arguments. We had a problem with that on Tuesday, where after everything was being said, somebody said, yeah, but he's wrong already because he's calling himself rabbi or something like that. It's like, well, listen to the teaching called Call No Man Rabbi. It might explain that whole problem, okay? So I know people have these very emotional knee-jerk reactions to things. But that's only because they haven't had the patience to go and really search out the matter, okay? Now, who wants to get us started here locally? Okay, Kirk. And then we have Steve walking around the mic, and then Rob will take your comments and questions on the live stream.
I just had
Kirk.
a comment that it reminds me when you were talking about a stronger covenant as it being a part of the translation. Or every time we read the Torah and finish a book, it's what's the blessing that we say after that?
Chazak, v'nitz chazik.
Yeah, and
right.
I was looking into that. It means be stronger, get stronger in it, and
Be strengthened.
it fits perfect. Yeah,
Yeah,
be strengthened.
amen.
That's right.
Be strong, and may we be strengthened by what we just read. Exactly. But then we have to get to a certain level then to get to this better or stronger or more fully developed or requiring a higher level of mastery. Okay, who's next? Okay, Deirdre.
First of all, let me just express how happy I am to be able to sit through a sermon.
Oh, yeah, your daughter's not sitting there.
No, she's at home with the sniffles.
Yeah.
So I have 2 comments and a 2-part question. I'll try not to be long-winded. I'm going to start with the question first. You may have answered this already, but I haven't been able to listen fully yet. Every single Are You Covenanted sermons. would Samuel be considered a member of the Melchizedekian priesthood, since he was under Eli's tutelage and was raised in the temple? And for that matter, would prophets in general be a member?
Yeah, prophets in general would be considered part of the Melchizedekian.
Okay.
Okay? Because remember, they're doing the primary thing, which is speaking the word of Yahweh with authority. They're the disciplers. They're the ones who, and look, they have a higher authority than the king even. You know, Saul ran into troubles not listening to Samuel. Okay? So when he said, who told you to go and do this before I got here? Why didn't you wait for me to show up to do the offering? You know, because I'm higher than you. I know you think you are because you're king, okay, but I'm the high priest, okay, so to speak, okay? So prophets fall into, most likely they fall into the Melchizedekian, okay?
So that's the question. The first comment I have is about chapter 7, verse 22, and you're talking about how, you know, the Adamic and Noahic and all the covenants, they're just kind of expanding upon each other, and they just go up and up and up. And the imagery that was brought to my mind was the imagery of coral. And it's basically, coral is alive, and it's a little creature, and they just expand on the skeletons of the ones that have gone before. And the more the coral expands, the healthier the reef system is. You know, the fish come and they dwell, you know, in and among the coral. They find food and shelter. So, I don't know, that kind of clicked in my head when we were mentioning the covenants. You know, in order to flourish, you need to keep expanding.
Amen. Excellent. And by the way, I didn't mention this, but I probably should have, is like, you know, when we say it's more fully developed, what did Yeshua start his ministry with? I'm going to take a Torah command and I'm going to more fully develop it. I'm going to tell you about adultery and I'm going to more fully develop it. I'm going to talk about murder and I'm going to more fully develop it. Okay? And so he said that if you could master the literalness of not committing adultery, now you need to master the part about not desiring to do it. You can master the actual, you didn't kill the person, but now you got to master your anger. Okay? And so you have those things. It's a more fully developed understanding, or the fullness of the intent. Okay? And the fullness of the intent of the temple and priesthood system is Yeshua as high priest in the heavenly temple. Okay? What else?
Just one last comment, you know, talking about going at, you know, your own pace in terms of, you know, trying to get everything settled, you know, learn the basics and then keep going on and on and on. I was terrible at school, so I really, or at least for math, so I got the school connection. But I thought to myself, you know, thank you, Yahweh, that we didn't all just get pulled into this together, and we had to learn and just make the grade, you know, right away. You know, we were able to go at our own paces, and I think he knew that we would need that because some of us are faster learners, some of us are slower learners, some of us are just stubborn, so we have to get that beaten out of us.
Amen. Amen. Look, it's the way it is with anything. Look, and that's why you have your teachers like me that, you know, spend, you know, hours and hours all the time in the Word, and so we have available to us at least a mastery of knowing what's in there to be available to putting the puzzle together. Okay? And so the same thing with any, you know, if you're a musician, if you're an athlete, whatever you are, the amount of time you put into your craft and mastering the basics, and anybody that's studied anything, whatever kind of thing that's an art of any sort, every art has the same rule: master the basics. Whether you're a musician, it's always the scales and the basics. If you're an athlete, it's the basic elements of whatever sport you're doing. Whatever it is, if you're an artist and you're painting, there are basics. Anything, it's always about mastering and focusing on and never departing from the basics. Okay? That's your core that you build on. If there's weakness in your basics, there's going to be weakness in everything else. And so to say that you're building the new covenant on nothing by saying the old covenant was bad and done away with, now what are you building it on? You've got nothing. It's sitting there on air. Okay? Okay, who's next? Okay? Well, you just leave it on for them when you give it to them. It's easier.
One thing about learning what we're learning in the covenants. One of the things.
Go ahead, stand up for everybody.
I'm sorry.
Get you on the camera. There you go.
Okay. About learning these covenants and like what we just learned today, I ask myself often, what do I want? Do I want God's good or do I want His best? And that helps because the thing is like in sports, it's muscle memory. You kind of referred to that several times because it's an automatic. You don't think it's just there. And so when we start learning this, the progression is the desire to want to get his best, which encourages internally to keep wanting to study and be around teachers that have knowledge. Like in sports, we always want to try to play over our head. That's how we learn more.
Right. Amen. Okay, so I'm going to use that for another example. I remember taking a class in college on, I forget what it was called, but it was a sports instruction class. So we had to learn how to teach people how to do sports, okay? And I'll tell you what, it was really tough for most of the students to come up the first time because after you learned the problem, you were able to do it better the second time. But the first time, the teacher had somebody stand up, tossed to them a baseball, and said, "Tell me how to throw one of those." The thing is, if you've been doing it your whole life, you don't think about actually telling somebody how to hold it even. Do you hold it with your palm? Do you hold it with your fingertips? How many fingers do you use? You don't think about the details because you do them automatically. It's muscle memory. And you know, how you position it. Do you bring it out here? Do you bring it over here? Is it by your ear? Is it out wide? I mean, how do you even position your body? Do you stand straight? Do you turn your body? But because and so people left a lot of steps out the first time. Now, after they saw what happened and realized that, then all the rest of them we realized we have to explain to a brand new person all of the steps. Okay? So the Torah, the Scripture, is giving you all the steps that eventually you won't have to think about all of them. But there's a lot of steps, and it becomes like muscle memory, and it becomes something that you develop in that way. And so, yeah, he's going to give us a lot of detail, and there's going to be a lot of stuff. But you know what? We have been you know what? Also, I'll tell you what else. If you're a coach, if somebody's been doing something wrong for a long time, correcting that is really hard because of the muscle memory. We got the same thing. Our brain is a big, thick muscle, okay? And our heart is too. And that becomes a problem where unlearning and retraining can be really tough because the habits are developed. And so, you know, if that person's been playing an instrument wrong or holding a ball wrong or doing whatever it is in their endeavor, getting them to stop doing it that way is really, really tough. Okay, go ahead.
I just thought of something else while you were talking about coaching, and I've coached, but I think of the scripture in Proverbs where it says you draw it out of them. And because of your heart's desire and your love for the Word and the Lord, you're drawing us to want to have that same kind of desire.
Yeah,
and
man.
that's what Proverbs says, and I see you doing that.
Appreciate that.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, who's next? Okay, and introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Rachel.
Hi, Rachel. You're going to have to put it right up by your mouth.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
So I had actually thought of what Yeshua had said with the adultery, and when you were teaching that, and it makes me think, is the book of Hebrews more like an expounding on that and a setting up of just making sure we have a foothold of, you know, where we are and the level we're supposed to be on? It seems like that's what he's really going through the whole book.
Well, it is to some degree, but I mean, he's really on a very, remember, everything in Scripture, at least if the Jews are correct, is written on at least 4 levels. So the very simple level is he's trying to help them understand what is going to happen when the temple goes away. But there are other levels like what you're talking about that can help us understand about, are you ready for this next level of growth, of covenant, of responsibility, of relationship with him, not just dealing with the mechanics of the changes. Okay, so yes, absolutely that stuff is in there. Okay, who's next? All right, Steve?
I was just wondering, sometimes when it comes to going to that next level, is it a possibility that some of the challenges we experience or a precursor to being able to understand the next level? Because what if there's something there that's kept you where you are, unable to move or forward or deeper in because you're still struggling with what's been behind you?
Yeah, that's certainly part of it, absolutely. And look, and part of this is why I've said over and over again, you need a teacher. You need someone to help you to see what you don't see and help push through. And also someone you can trust until you see it. That may be too simplistic, but just let me say that again. You still need someone you can trust even if you don't see it, until you see it, because it may take a while. Okay? Because if you don't see it, your tendency will be, well, if I don't see it, then the teacher must be wrong. Or if I don't see it, I must be right. That's not necessarily true. Doesn't mean it's necessarily wrong either, but I'm saying, but it's not necessarily true. Just because you can't see it doesn't mean the teacher's wrong. But that's why you have to vet out and find yourself a teacher. Okay? He's coming, Tricia. Okay? And so that's part of why Paul tells you need these people. Okay? Tricia?
Thank you. This really brings just a lot of the puzzle together. And when you're talking about the sensei and the mastery and the foundation, the keys that come to my mind with the Torah study that we had Tuesday was Deuteronomy 17. And a lot of the trust that we have, quote unquote, because you use the word sensei, and I understanding the powers and just the obedience, Deuteronomy 17 and the obedience of submission being a foundational key so that our minds can trust. And having that gives us a mastery key to be able to ground that soil, as you were discussing last week in last week's discussion about is our soil prepared.
Amen.
And so, I just wanted to bring, tie those pieces together because the obedience of submission to when we do come to you for counsel, and whether we agree or disagree, submission is when we don't agree and we obey, and that allows us to be torn, to be able to get to that next level.
Amen. Amen. Look, let's even use the military example of boot camp. Okay, boot camp is meant to break you down so that you can receive. Okay? And that's kind of like Deuteronomy 8:2. He's going to lead you through your wilderness to break you down, to humble you so that you can receive. But you got to get broken first because you're sort of that wild stallion, self-sovereign, not wanting to be bridled, and, and that's hard. And so he's going to let you go through a process. Eventually, it's going to break that stuff down. And once you become broken, he can lift you up. That's James chapter 5, or 4 or 5, where it talks about, when you can humble yourself before the master, then he can lift you up. Okay? And so, so now I want to make sure I'm giving you the right verse. 4:10. Okay? Where you can humble yourself, James 4:10. You humble yourself before the master so he can lift you up. But you got to get broken first. And you're going to lament and mourn and weep and all that stuff because he's breaking you. Nobody enjoys the breaking. Okay? Some of you have children. You know what they tried to do with them, and you know what your parents tried to do with you. And you know what? Most of us are only an incomplete process. Your parents didn't succeed with you, and you don't succeed fully with your children. He has to do the rest. Okay? There's a breaking that has to happen. All right? Not that we want to be broken and damaged, but he has to break that will of that self-sovereignty. He's got to break that bad piece of it. Okay? Yeah. Okay, this is part of his process to heal you and to get you in the right place. Okay, Shira?
Thank you so much. Oh, this is really exciting, but my mind is just swimming with questions from the historical perspective. When we use the analogy of the martial arts and the different belts or building into a new level, it could be mistakenly assumed that, okay, these people believed in Yeshua, so somehow they had reached a higher level of the Spirit than the people back in before Yeshua's time, which you've often said to us, that's not true. They had the Spirit in Yeshua's time. So the author of Hebrews is just finished telling them, you still need milk. You're not even ready for the meat.
Right.
So this whole new revelation or this exposition that we're having in Hebrews, I'm just saying, okay, could this have been if people were more responsive, if they were more accepting, because then this could have happened sooner. It's sort of like, when the 70 elders sat on the sapphire pavement, he could have had the kingdom come right then, and we also look at what you shared with us about, okay, Yeshua's delaying his coming because we're not ready. And so here these people are, they're clearly not ready, but Yeshua told them, because you rejected me, Jerusalem's going to be, destroyed.
Right.
And all this is going to be restored. So I'm just wondering, how do we put this in the historical context, how this terrible, terrible thing that Yahweh is using to bring them a revelation of the better. Can you?
Okay, so, all right, so that's a really good point, because I know that we can have this prideful sort of Christian thing pop in, and I want to make sure we don't have that happen, which is, this is only being done with this group of people because of necessity, not because they earned it. And no different than when they came out in Deuteronomy and he said, look, your exodus out of Egypt and you're getting to go into land is because you guys are special. It was part of a bigger plan. Okay? Well, in this case, he's explaining to these people, not because they had mastered a level, but they needed to know that to understand what he's going to do, they're going to have to learn to master a certain thought process, because this reality is the new reality. That doesn't make the people any more special, but it happens to be that these people happen to live at a time when this new reality was coming in. Okay? The new reality of a temple going away and this other priesthood now being something they need to understand better to function in, okay? They didn't need to know that much about the Melchizedekian while the Levitical was in function. So this is not elevating the people in any way. As a matter of fact, like you said, the writer of Hebrews picks on them pretty good, okay? They're still choking on milk. But the thing is that by necessity, this group of people, because it was happening in their lifetime and it affects all of us after that moment, we need to understand something that the people beforehand just didn't need. Not that they weren't qualified for, or they didn't, it's somehow they're negatively impacted because they didn't have it. They didn't need it. Okay? This is now a new necessity situation. By necessity, they needed to understand something, which then we all get to understand because it's still affecting us. There's still no temple, still no priesthood. We're still dealing with Yeshua as high priest and the heavenly. All those things are still happening. So it's a great point, though, because the Christian mindset often says, in a dispensational way, we're special because we are here now, and we got this special information or special this. It's kind of a Gnostic thing as well. And so, no. There's no expectation that the people are special. They're just needing to deal with this new reality. He says, you are now being forced to deal with a new understanding of reality. The reality of your life, which was based on a temple system and a priesthood, etc., has now gone bye-bye. It's going away. So you now have to adjust to that, all right? It'd be like a person who, nothing special, obviously, if you became paralyzed. You now have to adjust to a new reality of not being able to function the way you did. Maybe now you have to be in a wheelchair, or maybe you lose the use of your hands or something. Whatever it is, and now you have to adjust to a new reality. Okay? So it had nothing to do with the people in their walk, in their growth. It was just that at that time, they were experiencing this new reality. Okay? And so this is important. So that's a good point. Historically, you remember, he knows the end from the beginning. He's allowing and causing things to happen, knowing full well how the timeline's going to go. He knew we'd still be sitting here in 2019, and Yeshua was still not here, okay? That's not an issue. But he also knew that at this time, knowing the way things were going on in the Middle East area, that with the way the Roman Empire was and the way the tensions were and everything else, that was a good timing for the next step there, okay? Good point. Okay, who's next? Okay, Michael?
Yeah, I was wondering if...
Hey, Michael, how's it feel to be on this side of the camera?
Oh, wow, it's great. I was wondering in the millennium if the Levitical priesthood is going to come back into...
Yes. The answer is yes. It says so in Ezekiel, and the Levitical priesthood will function again.
Okay.
Because it's part of the mastery process that we're still not getting.
So, if I'm understanding correct, Yeshua is of a different priesthood, but yet he's going to be our...
Well, he'll be king, he'll be the king at that point.
Okay, so he won't be.
He's still going to be high priest of Melchizedekian priesthood forever, but we're going to be dealing with Levitical priesthood for a period of time.
Okay.
Okay? But he's going to be functioning mostly wearing the king hat. Okay? Does that make any sense to everybody? Okay? Because he's a high priest forever of the Melchizedekian. There's been Melchizedekian priests all the way through the Levitical priesthood reign. They have different functions. Generally, the Melchizedekians are the teachers, the instructors, the prophets who are bringing the word with authority. They're not doing the things of the temple service, okay, and judgment. Remember, they don't serve the same functions. And I've said that in a lot of the teachings in the past, but just so we're clear, the Melchizedek, look, think of it as Moses is the one and Aaron is the other. It's very simple. They didn't do the same things. Guidance, instruction, and Torah was coming from Moses and the elders. The judging of things like, you had to go show yourself to the priest, and temple function was being done by the Levites. So in the millennium, that will still be the same thing, okay? You'll still have that going on. They'll still be separate, okay? Now, there was a time when there wasn't Levitical priests before we get to Moses and Aaron, and there's a time now where there aren't Levitical priests functioning, and a time after, the destruction of the temple. So we do have those time periods, but the Melchizedekian priesthood flows through it all, without beginning, without end. Okay? Good question, though. All right. Live stream.
Okay, from Andrea Berry. It says, I work with contract and contract law. Would you say that we are talking about an addendum to the original contract or covenant to the original?
Okay, that's probably not a bad way to look at it. Okay, I mean, I don't want to open up doors for those kind of things, and people might want to make addendums. But look, we're doing this all the time, okay? By necessity, we need to figure out how to deal with microwave ovens and even ovens on the Sabbath, because they didn't have ovens or microwaves on the Sabbath. By necessity, we got to figure out what to do with cars on the Sabbath, cell phones on the Sabbath. I mean, there's all kinds of things that the Bible didn't have by necessity. They didn't have those things. So now we've got to come up with halakhic decisions about, they didn't have like organ donations and blood transfusions and things going on in those times. What do you do with those things? Okay? So by necessity, there needs to be a body, this is Deuteronomy 17 stuff, that can come together and make decisions, because those things need to be addended to the law, because the law doesn't specifically give you instruction on these things that did not exist at that time. Okay? There are people that have said we're breaking the Sabbath because we live stream. Somehow that's doing work or doing something. I don't have any idea. People will think things or whatever it is, but the point is, this technology is not mentioned anywhere in your scripture. Okay? So we are always being, that's why we need a Sanhedrin. Okay? We need a body to do Deuteronomy 17 to say, this is policy for the 21st century. Okay? Based on Scripture, because he says, and they will declare to you the right ruling of the Torah in a situation that Torah doesn't cover in that specificity that you would like. Okay? All right, next question.
Okay, from Chantel Jackson, chapter 8, verse 13. Is this still talking about the priesthood/temple?
Chapter 8, verse
13.
Yes, he's specifically here talking about the temple and the priesthood. Now remember, the actual covenant itself, Israel had already broken. Okay? Remember, that's why they were set out to dispersion. They were not in the land the way, without it being an occupied territory. I mean, they'd already broken these things. All right? But they're doing the best they can at this point to do things after they came back with Ezra and Nehemiah. They rebuilt the temple, etc. But here it's specifically saying that, look, this thing that's disappearing is the priesthood and the temple. Nothing else is disappearing. Next.
From Harrison Bryce, would it be accurate to say that the Melchizedek priesthood is the priesthood that we are supposed to one day become kings and priests into, given
Correct.
that it isn't genealogical?
Correct.
And then Sharon Masters, I think, is pretty much the same thing. As if our goal is to be kings and priests in the kingdom, will we be of the order of Melchizedek?
Same thing, yes. The priests that are being referred to as being a kingdom of priests will be Melchizedekian priests. Okay? Also, for those of you that are listening to the Melchizedekian teachings that are out there, which try to wipe out a bunch of the law and claim that the law was against us and all this other nonsense, recognize that now that you've heard what it actually does say in Hebrews, why that's a bunch of nonsense. Okay? Because these priests that we're talking about as Melchizedekian priests are bringing you a more fully developed Torah understanding, not wiping or taking out any of it. They're the ones telling you that it says not to commit adultery, that if you're lusting after, you're still breaking it. It's more fully developed. It's not taking anything out. We're not surgically removing anything. Even the temple is not being removed by any of the priests here. It's being removed by Rome. Rome's about to wipe that all out. Okay, go ahead.
From Michelle Perez, it says, do you suggest newbies to study the covenants?
I suggest newbies to study everything, but don't do it all at once and choke to death on it. Start in, let's see, Covenant Community 101. I think we're up to like 100 and something parts of that now or something. I don't know. Marty, how many parts are there in the Covenant Community now? The Covenant Community 101, what's it got, 100 and something? About 125 parts, so start there. Actually, I would just start with even the Are You Covenanted teaching, that's fine. Actually, Fear of Yahweh is a great place to start, because if you don't have that, you're not going to have anything else. Matter of fact, all of the students in the MTOI Academy have been going through part 1 of that teaching this past week, or part 2 they might be up to, so they're going through the Fear of Yahweh teaching. So they're all learning from that, because I think that's where it starts. If you haven't figured out how to fear him, none of this other stuff is going to work. Okay, next.
From Olivier and Janet Hoffman. It says, Rabbi, chapter 7, verses 25 and 26, are we supposed to approach Yeshua as our high priest, since we are not to pray to him but Father? Also, would a contrite, repentant heart be the offering that we can bring other than tithes?
Yes, I mean, these are things that were talked about where he desires repentance. He desires those things more than slaughterings of animals. But also, look, the high priest had a role. You didn't go to the high priest to ask him to intervene for you. The high priest did this on a regular basis for everybody anyway, did it on the Day of Atonement for everybody. Yeshua is very clear that he says that you would pray in his authority to the Father, that you would ask the Father in his authority, but that we're not praying to him. Okay? Now, you can ask him to stand on your behalf for something, but he's automatically doing that anyway. That's his role. Okay?
Okay, from Adam, it says, how did Abram know or / recognize the Melchizedek? Wouldn't Abram have had to somehow have heard of this high priest prior to this meeting?
Right, because I don't like to point to extra biblical books, but in the book of Yashar, the book of Jasher, Abraham was raised by his grandfather Noah, okay, or great, whatever it was. I don't want to get into how many, whatever it was, but Noah raised him quite a bit, and while his father was very much busy, Nahor was busy, making idols for Nimrod and stuff, okay, but he already was being raised by Noah. Noah was Melchizedek at the time, and so by the time we get to Shem, who was Noah's son, Shem is, the book of Joshua says that when he sat down to eat with Melchizedek, it said it was Shem. So he would have had a relationship with Noah and his sons, or at least Noah and Shem for sure. So, okay.
From Kurt and Stephanie Meyer, how does the firstborn males replaced by the Levitical priesthood fit into the priesthood structure outlined in Hebrews? When it refers to the first / original covenant, are they part of it?
It doesn't say anything about that at this point. I think that what we're looking at is the anointed appointeds, like we saw before they went to the Levitical, all right? And the anointed appointeds were not often the firstborns. A lot of times they ended up being not the firstborns. We see that as we go through the children of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. As we go down, we can see some of that playing through. But look for it by the fruit manifestation, okay? What is the person an anointed, appointed? They would likely be the Melchizedekian. Are they speaking the word of Yahweh with authority? Are they getting insight that only can come from above? Are they clarifying for you and giving you the answers that, are they doing that role that Moses and the elders would have been doing? All right? So all you got to do is listen to the teachings that anybody's putting out there, and you'll know or you won't know. Okay? But of course, until you find one, you don't know what to compare it to. I mean, I'll use a really bad example. Okay, if you've never been to New York and had pizza, then you don't know when you compare your pizza where you live because you don't have the right measuring stick. No, but I'm serious. Think of it this way. If you are listening to a bunch of teachers that are all similar in level until you've actually heard an anointed, appointed one, you don't know the difference till you find one. Because they're all like the same. They're on similar levels. Okay? So, I mean, if you can't really tell the difference between like a Papa John's and a Domino's and a Little Caesars and what real pizza is, it's not your fault if you haven't had it. I've seen people's reaction when they've had what I'm talking about, okay? It's different. Okay, I can't explain it to you. So I'm not trying to be condescending or insulting. I'm just saying is your contextual basis for understanding is limited to what you've experienced. So if you don't have the experience, you wouldn't know. Okay, I'll give you a martial arts example. When I was studying for all the years in the forms that I know, one day a teacher walked in, I thought he was really cocky, and said, hey, when you want to see what it's really supposed to look like, you can come check out my school. And I had my own school at the time, and he walked into my school and acted like that. But he got my curiosity, so I went over to his place and watched him doing the same style I thought I knew, and then I realized I didn't know. Because now I saw it, I go, oh, that's what it's supposed to look like. But I didn't know till I saw it. I had thought I had had the real deal. You don't know until you experience something that is the real deal, because you think you know, because you have a limited experience to measure against. Okay, so that's the kind of the point I'm trying to make. But then hopefully you have a discernment that when you do see it, you go, oh, yeah, that's it. And that's when I took my belt off, laid it at his feet, and said, okay, teach me from scratch. You know? And he said, no, put that back on. I'll still teach you from scratch. But it was, okay? Now, it wasn't that it was completely different, but it was completely different, if you know what I'm saying. In other words, everything that they were doing, I knew. I just didn't know it in the fullness of the more fully developed and the higher level of mastery. So what I was doing was essentially, like an elementary or grade school level thing that was just not being done the right way. But you have to be open to look for that, okay? So if everybody you're listening to out there all sounds similar, you probably haven't found the person yet. Because when you find them, they will not sound like everybody else. They'll be on a whole different level, okay? And that's not being, cocky, because people say, well, you just think about it. Look, I'm not the one that says that about me. You guys are, okay? All right? But it's about you noticing that. If everybody's on the same level, then you're not finding that person because they're not all anointed. Okay, so if they all sound the same, you're still waiting to find somebody. All right? I think that's a fair assessment. If you disagree, that's fine, but maybe somebody else wants to agree or disagree. Okay? I don't even remember what the question was, but go ahead.
Okay, comment from Pete Lamb. Says, Rabbi Steve is the real pizza of Torah teachers.
You know that real pizza is real pizza and it's good is because it doesn't need pepperoni. All right, go ahead.
Okay, from the Starkle clan, it says, could Rabbi elaborate on chapter 7, 26, 27, verses 26 and 27 with regards to the slaughtering offerings?
No, all it's saying is that it's just trying to explain to you that the priests had to do certain things. Yeshua gave of himself once. Those priests always had to make an atonement for themselves before they could make an atonement for anybody else. So they had to offer up a slaughter offering because they knew that they were fleshly, imperfect people. And he's simply saying Yeshua did that once and for all. He doesn't have to do that. He doesn't need to constantly have to make another offering of himself before he does anything for us. That's as simple as it gets. Okay, he did once for all, is what it says in verse 27. But see, unless you really understand the sacrificial system, you don't know how the priests, before they did what they did, they had to make one for themselves and then one for the people that they were doing it for. Because they had to make sure that they had been atoned for first. Okay? Next.
From Nessa, says, question, would it be fair to say the Melchizedek priesthood handles matters concerning the spirit of the law, and the Levitical priesthood handles the letter of the law?
No. Okay? All right? Let's make it more simple. The Levitical had only two roles: temple service, in other words, all the functionings of the temple, and some judging. Okay? In other words, there's certain things you had to go to the priest and have the priest make a judgment. The Melchizedekian was the instructors, the teachers. The 70 that had the anointing from Moses go on to them to go amongst the people teaching the Torah. Okay, so the Melchizedekian taught the letter and the spirit. The Levitical implemented the temple parts of it and made judgment about the things that is in that part of the law for them to judge. You had something on your skin, you had to go to a priest, not a Melchizedekian, to say, hey, is that something that's sarat or is not sarat? Okay? If it was on your clothes, if it was on the building of your house, there were things you had to. That's why Yeshua said to the lepers, go show yourself to the priest. Because the priest had to be the one to make that call. Okay? Okay, so the priesthood had a very limited authority. Judgment in certain things and running the temple. Okay? Everything else was being done by Melchizedekians. Who did they go to for issues of law? Deuteronomy 17. They really went to the Melchizedekians. They went to Moses and the elders. And when the issue was too hard and they would come up to the main head, the higher ones, like the heads of 10s, 50s, whatever, then they said, look, when they tell you what to do, you need to do it. They're not going to the priests alone. Now, the priests were involved when it was the few things the priests had to judge. There were things for the priests to judge. Okay? What's next?
That's all of them.
All right, awesome. All right, fantastic. How many did we end up with today? 684, awesome. Steve, give that back to Rob. He's going to close us anyway. Give that back to Rob. Okay, let's get the children to come down. Okay, Lisa's going to go upstairs.
I sent a runner up there.
Oh, you did? Okay. Did anybody go in here for the Gadol? Okay, Kirk, you're going to go in there just to make sure the Gadol kids are coming in? Okay. In case any of you online don't know what I'm talking about, Gadol in Hebrew means big, Katan means small, so that's the way we named our classes. The older children are the Gadol class, and the younger children are the Katan class. Okay? This is exciting. Now what are we going to do when we finally get through Hebrews? I'm taking a vacation. I don't know. Let's see. We have 10 more parts to go to equal the heart of the matter. We're getting close. We're on 54. You think I should take a vacation? I think I should too. I'm thinking of going to Ridgecrest in October. That won't be a vacation, though. Okay. I am planning a cruise after that, yes. One with a place for me to sit and a soft serve ice cream machine 24/7. We're good. Okay. You guys laugh, but that's exactly what happens. Come on the boat, you'll see. All right. Ask the few that went with me the last time. I sat, had my stuff and my books, and was near the ice cream machine, and that was all there was to it. All right. Ask my wife. She's been on 10 of these things with me. They all think I'm joking sometimes about sitting by the ice cream machine. They all think it's a joke. Okay. Although last time I couldn't because the smokers were sitting out by the ice cream machine, so I had to sit inside and walk out to the ice cream machine, but, you know, what can you do? All right. We got all the children? We're good? Everybody down from upstairs, more or less? No? They're still coming? Got a few stragglers? All right, so the way this is going to finish up is that Rob White is going to close us in prayer, and then those who want to can come up here, and we're going to do a little wave, Shabbat Shalom to everybody on the live stream. All right? Now, this is going to be important. You know I've said this many times. The teachings are designed to do 4 things, right? Understand it so you can do it, so you can defend it, so you can teach it. This stuff, starting in part 40, whatever, when I started talking about the book of Hebrews, you're going to need to listen to those until you can get to the part 3 of that, the third step. You're going to have to be able to explain the really different way that you now understand what your Christian friends, whoever's going to argue with you, although you shouldn't argue with them anyway, but you know, when you're explaining things to even the Messianic friends, to understand that that's not what Hebrews is talking about, okay? You're going to need to listen to these things a few times to really get clarification. And recognize that this is not deep. It's actually more simple. It's just it was right in front of your face, but it was badly translated and not in context. Okay, this did not take advanced scholarship to understand. Okay? It's actually very simple. Okay, I'll give you an example. I had a guy the other day on the phone with me. I won't tell you who it is. Won't call anybody out. And he was asking something about hadn't listened to the parts yet about, you know, Hebrews and that. And said, well, this whole thing on Melchizedek, it says he's without genealogy, without beginning, without end. So that means that he's Yeshua, right? Because, I mean, after all, it's a forever. He said, that would be the Peshat. I said, no, the Peshat is that it doesn't require genealogy. He goes, oh. See, sometimes it is more simple than you think even the simple is. The simplicity of the Peshat is that it's telling you don't need to have genealogy to be this. Okay? And look, I fell into the other one for years too. The church I had gone to for that brief period of time, they thought that Melchizedek was Yeshua. That's what they taught, you know, because they couldn't understand Hebrews. And really, it's not Hebrew that they couldn't understand as far as the language. They couldn't understand Greek. Oh, it's all Greek to them anyway. Okay, anyway. So. All right, we got everybody now? Awesome. If you'll all rise, Mr. Rob White's going to go ahead and close us in prayer, and then we'll wrap it up.
Father, thank you for this awesome day. Thank you for another great teaching from our teacher, our rabbi, to bring us into a better understanding of the Word and to unlearn things that we've been taught wrong, and how we can take it and apply it, and that we just form these new habits to walk this out, you know, effortlessly. And Father, watch over each and every one as they go out this week, and keep them safe, and keep all of us safe. In Yeshua's name, amen.
Amen. Amen. Okay, anybody wants to be on camera to wave goodbye, come on up here. Stephen Connor's dissing you up here. But that's his job as your good friend. That's okay, I'm going to bring her in. I'll bring her into the honored position. There we go. All right. Okay, once we get everybody up here, we'll make sure that Austin says that we're all in the camera. It's our first time, no. It's our first time using the platform, so it should actually help a little bit, I'm guessing. Okay, is everybody okay? Everybody's on camera, we're good? Okay. So on 3, what we're going to do is we're going to say Shabbat Shalom, Shavua Tov, which means have a good week, and then we're going to tell them that we love them. You ready? Here we go. 1, 2, 3.
Shabbat Shalom, Shavua Tov, we love you.
Hi, Stephen.
You always got a kid in your arms. I haven't been able to give you a proper hug. You feel that love in 20 seconds.
I have to bring it in from New York. Okay, so just again, for the parents of little children, they're going to be bringing tables out.